everyone, we're live.
Hello.
And look at this. We keep meeting like this, Eric. What are you doing in the stream?
I am here to talk about Pathfinder, of course. So thank you for having me.
Of course. And
glad to have you on.
You are coming to us live from beautiful downtown Reno, Nevada.
Just outside of downtown Reno,
That's right.
World famous Peppermill Casino and Resort, the site of the Gamma Expo, the annual Game Manufacturer Association trade conference for the tabletop game business.
And
only Steven's in the same place. Longtime viewers will note that my random white background is different than my usual random white background. Right. I guess has a painting in it.
That's right. Everyone's in a different location. Wait, let me change my green screen. No, I'm the same place as I always am. But Gamma is the time and place where you announce big things.
That's right.
And supposedly you announced something big today.
That's right. We this morning announced something we've been working on for a few months now, and that is going to be a big part of our publishing program over the next year, and that is the Pathfinder Second Edition Remaster Project, which is going to be a representation, essentially, of the Pathfinder core rules. We'll be releasing it under the Orc license, which is nearing completion. It is a new open sharing license that we created in light of some of the controversy related to the open game license. As part of that, we will be moving on from the open game license, and that requires us to cut the cord on a couple of nostalgic elements that remain in the game. When we designed Pathfinder Second Edition several years ago, Mark and other members of the team really started from the ground up. In fact, that was kind of the number one mission statement, which was we start from a blank sheet of paper, and so happily, given what happened in January with the open game license, the core of the Pathfinder system is original and not something that we need to worry about because the OGLs no longer seems as safe as it did for 23 years. And so that requires us to take a really close look. And in fact, there are some elements that we still had kind of in the mix, mostly nostalgic creatures or magic items or things like that, many of us have a soft spot in our heart for, especially those of us who've been playing, since the 80s. But in
Jason was probably like, no, the Odiug.
Yeah, that's one of his favorites. But, at the end of the day, there's plenty of monsters in the sewer, and we can fill that niche pretty easily. So we had to take a look at it. And because it's not just our business, but so many of our partners and, third-party product producers and things like that rely on the licensing to do products of their own, we kind of can't have any of that poison in the batter anymore. And so that's one of the things that started us thinking about it. But then once we kind of came upon the idea of, okay, what's the best way forward? We started to realize that this also presented an opportunity to incorporate, 4 years of errata into the books, to take a look at how the books are presented. Especially since January, we've had tens of thousands of new Pathfinder players come, and some of them we've started to realize we're kind of nervous about a 640-page rule book that had, when we started Pathfinder 2007, put everything in one book seemed like a real strong strategic choice, and I still think it was a strong strategic choice. But the reality is that the newer generation of gamers, especially people who all they've ever really heard about Pathfinder is it's more complicated, they see that giant book, and that becomes a bit of a challenge. And at the same time, with the pandemic changing prices on everything from paper to cardboard to international shipping, a big, heavy 5-pound book presents some challenges in and of itself. So we wanted to take a look at our core rules, the way we bring people into the game, make it easier for people to jump on board, particularly new players. And now that we've gone through the cycle of, for example, the core rulebook and the Advanced Player's Guide. The Advanced Player's Guide has more options for your core rulebook characters. So this gave us an opportunity by sort of bisecting the classes between those two books into Player Core 1 and Player Core 2, which are the names of some of the new books that are coming out as part of this process. We can amalgamate all of the relevant information for, say the fighter, can all be in one book instead of having to jump across a couple of books. And we just feel that that's another kind of upside of the process. So we're really doing this to make the game more accessible, to divest ourselves from some of the legacy sort of content that is still derived from the system reference document through the open game license. It's so techy. If people have not been paying attention to that, I apologize. But really what it means is there's a handful of spells, magic items, monsters that we kept because, we liked them and we could. And for many, many years, there was never really any sense that the open game license wasn't on a rock solid footing. I think that assumption was severely challenged earlier this year. And so we're changing the presentation of our core rules. Some of that material, of course, still works. It's still fully compatible with second edition. So to use your Audiug example, if you want to still put an Audiug in your adventure and you have the bestiary, or you've got access to any of the numerous free catalogs of Pathfinder rules online, you'll still fully be able to do that. But from us going forward with our published material, we're going to be focusing more on original Pathfinder creations and things, that have drawn from the public domain and the world's, fantasy lore and things like that. So it's a remaster of the rules, but it's not a new edition. It's not a change of a significant amount that people will say, I don't understand what this game is anymore. The core rulebook I already have is now invalid. That's not really the case.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that you went through Jason Bowman on Twitch for about an hour, sort of the background of the 4 new books that are coming out: Player Core, GM Core, Monster Core, Player Core 2. Yeah. I think really people are more interested now in asking questions and having you answer. I understand you don't know everything, and this is still, you're not on the development team directly, and we're still in the beginning processes, but we'll at least try to answer as many questions as we can. Right. Obviously, there has been a lot, and obviously we'll try to do all as well as, super chats.
I'm going to try to combine a few from multiple people that directly speak to the things Eric just said in his intro. Because I heard like lead-ins to 2 of them. So one, a lot of people were talking about the book split up, which I personally think is a really good move, because I have seen so many people say that they're intimidated by the size of the core rulebook. They're like, if the book has to be this long to even explain the rules, how can I play this game? Even though actually, if you wanted to, you could publish a soft cover, like 40 to 60 page book that was called the Quick Start Guide, had no character building and had a few pre-gens and really all that you needed to play the game. So, but some people are getting more cynical and talking about, well, now it's 2 books. But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it the case that if you look at core rulebook, game master guide, advanced player's guide, and bestiary, the 4 table legs, Pathfinder Second, that when you go to these 4 books, Player Core 1, Player Core 2, GM Core, and Monster Core, that you're getting like the same amount of content? Or bestiary canceling Monster Core, it's 3 books to 3 books of the other thing. So it's not some kind of cynical play to split things up. It seems like to me it's just a way to make it easier for people to get into it. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. I think somebody added up the page counts we've announced on the books, and they said, well, it's actually 48 pages fewer than the original 4. But okay, yes, fair. You got me. Frankly, I know my game designers, and I'll probably end up having to expand each of these books by 16 pages before they come out anyway. So we'll see how that all ends up. But it's a comparable, amount of content. And so, so the idea really is we have to do this because of the OGL issue. We think it's a great opportunity to make the game more accessible. And then I think there's also been a lesson that we continue to kind of learn, going back even to 2007 when we first did Pathfinder Adventure Path, all the way up to 2009 when we first did Pathfinder First Edition. There's always that sense of like, well, do we want to be our own thing, or do we want to be a continuation of the world's oldest role-playing game? And in 2007, when we were 4 adventure paths into producing 3.5 compatible content under the OGL, the remit very much was, yes, we want to, a lot of people called Pathfinder First Edition 3.75, and the idea was, it was pretty much 3.5, but with, some additions and improvements across the board. And then when we did second edition, I think the idea was like, well, let's make Pathfinder the best Pathfinder it can be. Let's not focus so much on legacy stuff. At that point, finally, Wizards of the Coast was producing a credible version of D&D for the first time in a decade. And so making it more like D&D didn't seem to be the right answer. So that's why we kind of started afresh, came up with the 3-action economy, challenged, as you know, Mark, a lot of the core assumptions of 3.5, and really decided to make our own game. And at every step of the way, we're always nervous about that. And what I think we find almost every time is that the audience is very receptive of Pathfinder being its own thing. And so, when that comes to the rules, that's one side of it, but also, the monsters and the lore and everything, I think, is another. And as we've been producing Pathfinder now for, coming on 15 some years, we've evolved a lot. Then the industry's evolved a lot, and just sort of cheap nostalgia for stuff that came out in the 70s doesn't play as well, with someone who was born in the 90s today, that it is now increasingly part of our core audience. So when we look at things like removing the 9s alignment grid, or one of the things that Jason and Logan just mentioned in the other stream that just ended, is we're also going to be removing ability scores and just focusing on the bonuses, because literally all ability scores were a tie to the legacy of the game and an extra step of complexity when you're making your character. So if we can actually make that change that makes Pathfinder a little bit more of its own thing and make it easier to create characters for new players, then that strikes me as a plus. And I think most current Pathfinder players would agree. I hope they will.
We wanted to remove them in Pathfinder Second, and we got them out for the beginner box.
Yeah, I know. We some of these changes we're making now were things that we contemplated before and said, well, the OGL is sacrosanct, so we don't need to replace these monsters. Some people will really appreciate them. And I think one of the cool things about what we're doing is some of that stuff that's changing names or being removed a little bit is still compatible with the system. So if you have a handful of monsters that you really love, because they were introduced in the strategic review in 1974 or whatever, and you've loved them since you were a kid, you have Pathfinder Second Edition stats for those monsters. So as long as we're in Pathfinder 2e, we're not going to be publishing and focusing on those creatures or those items, but that doesn't have anything to do with what you can do in your home and things like that. So in a sense, if you look at what we're going to do with the Monster Core book that comes out in March of 2024, there will be some creatures that are currently in the bestiary that are not in the system at all. Now, we'll very likely look for things that new creatures or existing Pathfinder lore creatures that fill the kind of same niche, right? So it's like, we don't need the Atiug, but we do want monsters who live in sewers, right? So we'll replace some of that stuff. But in a sense, what that's going to be doing is it's going to be adding a substantial amount of new material to the kind of core monster package without we're not going to send goons to your house to get rid of the Atiug, right?
Some people actually literally asked that in the pre-chat, if you were going to send Pinkertons to pick up.
Well, I know the Overton window seems to have really changed, so it's a fair question. We won't be doing that, but but you could still use that stuff. And so in a sense, and I realize, I'm trying to be very positive about it, but it's like, I do think that's kind of a win-win. People will end up with access to more monsters across the board.
So the big question that keeps coming up, just because it does seem to have fairly big implications, is the removal of alignment, and then also how law and chaos would work as well on the side. So how is that going to work, especially when you have gods, when you have paladins, when you have devils, you have different types of damage, good damage, doing more against devils and demons.
So we're still going to have creatures. So if a creature is largely known, let's say devils, for example, which are historically, those are evil, right? So you say, we're not going to have alignment in the game. It's like, well, are they still evil? And the answer is yes. They will end up having probably a trait that's called unholy, I think is what the team is calling it. And an angel, by the same token, would have a holy trait. They're going to lean into edicts and anathema as actual guides, to tell you kind of how to play the character. One of my big concerns, because look, I've been playing these games for a long time. And so when the idea came to me, maybe we should get rid of alignment. I immediately knew that a significant amount, maybe not a majority, but a significant amount of the current Pathfinder audience hates alignment anyway. It's probably the most divisive rule in the game. It's the thing that causes the most unfun arguments, in forums, things like that. So I knew that when this announcement, should we make the decision, that when we made the announcement, there would be a handful of players. I think, frankly, particularly younger players, we'll see. I don't know if that's the case, but who are just going to pump their fists and be like, yeah, finally, right? So, okay. So some portion of the audience is going to be satisfied with that. But I just, had a birthday on Thursday, and like, I'm not young, at this point, and I've been using alignment my whole life. And so for me, the issue was also one of like, well, wait a minute. That little 2-letter code gave me as the GM, and I GM probably more often than I play, gave me as the GM a little kind of quick hint on how to role play that character. And my fear, as I expressed to the design team, was if we remove that, then aren't we kind of hampering the GM's ability on the fly, lawfully, okay, I kind of know how to play that character. But honestly, I think if we were to, for example, in the stat block or in the short stat block, list a few adjectives like greedy, loud, obstinate, or something like that, that might actually help people quickly get a sense of how to role play that character, probably a little bit better than an abstract sort of cosmic balance of good and law.
So like a role playing notes.
And that's my understanding, is that we're going to be kind of leaning into that a little bit more. So for me, it was like, that was and I haven't seen a lot of people talking about that aspect of it, so maybe that's more just an Erik thing, but that was, I just want to be clear that change is challenging even for us sometimes when we're the ones doing it. And so that was my primary concern, and the rules team was able to alleviate some of that concern by providing alternative ideas that we think will serve those concepts better.
Right.
I think with what they've got planned for edicts and anathema and the holy and unholy, I think that is along those lines, is there may in fact be a better way for the characters and creatures who actually care about it. Logan Bonner in the previous stream made, I think, a very interesting point and was analogizing it to attacks of opportunity. And it's like what we did with second edition was we made attacks of opportunity important to the classes and monsters for whom it should be important, and kind of removed it for everything else. And that has substantially sped up combat at the table for, stuff that would never have really hit, even, with their attack of opportunity or what have you. And so that, I think, is the approach that they're trying to guide toward when it comes to sort of how we handle some of the things that the 9 alignment grid used to handle in the game. How will those things be handled in the future? When it comes to like, okay, yeah, but what about the law chaos axis? I confess, I'm not sure. That will be, I'm sure, a topic that we're going to get into more on May 26th at PaizoCon, when we do even more reveals, and we'll be talking about key things between now and then on the blog. And I just, because alignment is such a big part of the change, I would say probably the most significant change. Then I think we'll talk more about that, and I'm sure the folks who are arms deep in the design can speak to that aspect of it better than I can.
So I think already what you said about role playing notes is going to alleviate concerns for some people.
Oh, good.
Who I saw in chat who are like, "How will we figure out on the fly if we're using the new monsters and we're still using alignment?" It's like, well,
those are my
role
people.
playing notes section. It says that they're greedy and sadistic, and that's going to give you a good start.
Right, and I think that's better too, because one of the elements that I think makes the alignment chart feel more dated, perhaps today, when a lot of games are about a lot more than just going into dungeons and slaying monsters, is that surely not all lawful evil characters have the same motivations, the same mannerisms, the same, so it's a useful catch-all, but it's also a gross oversimplification in many ways. And that's great for a Facebook meme, but it's not necessarily the best when you're trying to bring nuance to the game table. So we think we have, some stuff that is going to, for the creatures and characters who have traditionally cared about alignment, there will be elements in the system that speak to that. I think part of the question also asked a little bit about, the outer planes and the outsiders and things like that. And we are not planning on changing that. The Great Beyond is well established. If you care about how the individual outer planes mimic the afterlife of a particular alignment, for example, you can still have that sort of abstraction in your game. We'll probably be talking more about what, types of petitioners or what have you go to that realm and why, and not just have it be a raw rules mechanic thing and have it be more about their behavior. Likewise, the devils and the demons and the daemons, they will all still exist. They will all have different, aspects of their evil or their philosophy that we'll detail in the books and things like that. So if you're like, whoa, no alignment, what is it? Does that mean aeons are gone? Does that mean demons and devils are the same thing? No. It's just that we'll be leaning more into the other differences between the various outsider types. And also, there was a mention in the previous panel, and again, I highly recommend anyone who wants to do more of a deep dive on the rules aspect. Jason Logan just wrapped up their presentation, which will be on YouTube probably tomorrow, if not sooner. Go check that out. They are the actual authorities on the rules of game, and they'll probably give more nuanced and smarter answers than I will on that stuff. But they did mention that the Monster Core will have revisions to demons and devils and things. And just to clarify specifically what that means is that if you look at the bestiary, each of the outsider or what used to be outsider types have a mixture between like stuff that we created for Pathfinder and things that are more traditionally associated with the system reference document, i.e. D&D. And so we'll be shifting some of those, creatures into the background and bringing some of our own creatures that are just more kind of brought out from world mythology and things into the forefront when it comes to those outsider types.
So I'll tell you now, your answer is great, but we have a lot of questions, and if you keep spending 15 minutes per answer, we're going to be here till 3 in the morning.
Okay, let's do lightning round.
Let's get through the last one that we had multi of, and then do the super chats. All right. So the last one I saw in a lot of places were people who had a question that it also interests me, which is that with the amount of changes that we're seeing, some people said, well, doesn't this mean that this could be kind of like a 2.5? A partial edition change, but the messaging from Paizo is that it isn't. So I told those people, I trust that messaging from Paizo, but I'd like to hear from Erik about why. So. Sure.
We feel like this change is short of a 0.5 edition change. I'm kind of thinking of it more like an errata plus, and that's why we use the remaster. Another word we could have used was remix, when it comes to the types of monsters that we're presenting in the main monster book, but we're not changing the fundamental rules about how monsters work. Old stat blocks are completely compatible with new stat blocks. Yes, there's some nuance in a small percentage of things, but that to me could also be true of an errata. So this is to me not the, this is 2.5. We could frankly, if we had announced 2.5, we'd probably make more money. If the idea is got to rebuy the core books, everybody, you have to do it. That I think would be probably have generated a fair amount more acrimony. But it would be truly a new fresh start. Everybody has to start over. And that's not what this is. If you look at 3.0 to 3.5 back in the day, one of the problems was that those things started to be seen as fundamentally incompatible. And that is not the route that we're trying to do here. So there are still a handful of things that, we've looked at and said, if we should ever get to the point where we're going to do a third edition of Pathfinder, we could go even further with this. We could change the name of this core class to, somebody asked me today, hey, what about the barbarian? Doesn't that have, for various historical reasons, isn't there kind of a value judgment there? Doesn't there? What about calling them berserker? That's a great idea, but that's not something we're going to do in the middle of an edition, because then every reference to that core class is going to be confusing and all that. So we wanted to make sure that the changes that we were making were more about the individual pieces and the tools and like the names of the magic items maybe, or the new magic items replaced for ones that we're moving away from. That doesn't fundamentally change the system. So that's why we're not, referring to it as a 0.5 or what have you. I mean, ultimately, that's going to probably be the audience's decision to make. But for us, it's very important that this be, continuation of Pathfinder Second Edition. Even to the point where when we were mocking up some covers, one of the ideas was like, oh, do we put Pathfinder Remastered on this? And the answer ultimately that we came to was no. We want people to understand that this is more of a evolutionary step in Pathfinder Second Edition, which we absolutely love and which is extremely popular and quite frankly is much more popular today than it was at the beginning of the year for reasons. And so we love Second Edition, and we didn't want to give people the impression that the changes that we were making were so substantial that you would have to replace your books or that you would be lost, having just learned Pathfinder from the freshly bought core rulebook.
All right.
That makes sense.
Let's do semi-rapid fire, and then
I'll do my best, everybody.
And then we'll go into
lightning round.
A little lightning round, and then we'll go back to long form. Okay. Cybersmith Videos for £10 says, "Oh boy, this is a deep dive. This is a chance to clear up some ambiguities. For instance, the rules allude to water pressure damage. E.g., it takes a ritual to survive on the ocean floor, but don't go into detail. Would you clarify these rules now?"
Now, no, but I will say that as Jason and Logan and the members of the Rules and Lore team are going through the entire system systematically, I think they're aware of a handful of places where more clarity would be of great value. And, one of the great things about sort of opening up the patient is you can fix some stuff that you notice while you're in there that maybe wasn't the main reason for the surgery. So I can assure you that clarifying the rules on rituals as they relate to water pressure was nowhere near the top reasons why we were doing this. But while we're in there, maybe they'll take a look at it and other things like it to create some general sort of improvement of life issues across the board.
What is this? First edition D&D? I mean, why didn't you have water pressure in there? I mean, they would have. Come on. Amateur hour. Nicholas Paradise for $10 said, "Will there be new first and second level permanent items in the GM core for classes that don't use weapons or armor to buy? Classes with cantrips tend to sit on gold until third or fourth level." Again, very specific question.
Wow, that is a really specific question. I'm not sure I fully understand that question.
Basically, they're asking if there's going to be more options for first and second level.
Yeah, and let me actually point out something that I don't think Jason and Logan mentioned, but I think is important, is that even though the vast majority of the magic items will be moving to the GM core book, the Player Core book, the first Player Core book coming out in November, will have a brief section on starting magic items like healing potions and, I think probably the equivalent of like rings of protection and things like that, that you would often get in your first couple of levels. So we're not going to force players who are making new characters or advancing their character the first time, who have finally a little bit of money. There will be a short section in the equipment section, as I understand it, in the core Player Core.
Like in the PF1 core, there were a few first level consumables in there.
I think we might juice that up a little, and add some more stuff. A lot of the alchemical items beyond the basics are going to be moving to Player Core 2 to accompany the alchemist, who kind of is the main one who uses that stuff. Throwing people into the deep end with mutagens and things like that is a little... if you think about it, that really is, and this isn't exactly why we determined which classes would be in Player Core 1 and which would be in Player Core 2. But if a class was perceived as like particularly techy and kind of was a stopping point for new players, the chances of that class being in Player Core 2 are much higher than it being in Player Core 1. And I think the Alchemist fits in that category.
So we have RG Esposito for £10 said, "Speaking of books, what happens to those of us who got the PDFs from the Humble Bundle and new players? Do we have to buy these books again, or will these PDFs be updated accordingly?"
We will not be updating the PDFs like a standard errata because it is a little bit more elaborate than that. We are very well aware that people would love an opportunity to get the newer material without having to kind of pay premium price for their PDFs and things like that. The mention of Humble Bundle is certainly an interesting one. There may be an opportunity down the road there for folks to kind of catch up with the new stuff at a relatively low price, but that's kind of putting the cart before the horse right now.
By the way, this one has come up a few times, even though we don't have a super chat, but is Magic Missile gone?
I have to be honest, I don't know. I certainly don't want it to be gone. I think mechanically what we've done with Magic Missile is very, very interesting. It's kind of one of my favorite little innovations. And mechanically it's totally original. The name itself maybe will change. But I think that the first level spell that automatically hits that you can pump different amount of actions into to increase the number of bolts that fly out of your hand, that will be, I can almost guarantee you that will be retained.
Okay, well, I'm throwing
called Force Missile, like we did in the Pathfinder Adventure card game, which was published under the OGL. Maybe.
You did it. I was going to throw my name into the ring of Force Missile, but you should really probably name it what we call it in our games for the last 30 years. What do you call it in your game? Plan A. That's what we call it. Plan A. That's always Magic Missile.
I might call it like Old Faithful. I think that'd be a good name for it.
It's same difference. Yeah. Lord God for 11 Canadians said GM and PCs just bought into Pathfinder Second Edition buying books. Are the changes going to be offered as errata to those who just bought existing books, free or not free? Again, you pretty much answered that. Yeah.
I mean, literally every rule we publish is online for free the day after it comes out, sometimes even earlier. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to get that. And I think we will, I think as this process goes on, there probably will be some overviews of like, here are the most significant changes, and that will help people to kind of not get stuck.
And we keep emphasizing this is not 2.5. You will still be able to use all your original rule books.
That's exactly right.
For everything.
And it sounds like this is the same game that, Logan and Steven and Jason and I worked on, but with updates and errata from 4 years of people understanding it.
Yep.
Captain Rylick, the Brass Dragon, who's been around for a while, $5 said, I just wanted to say, Eric and others at Paizo, thank you for removing alignment. Alignment damage hurt things like complex villains who aren't black and white evil. That's it.
I think, I think that is a increasingly popular perspective among the people who play Pathfinder. Not universal by any stretch, but increasingly.
Again, we have a couple real specific questions, which I think these are going to be better answered at the PaizoCon talk.
Very likely.
94 for $2 says, will rogues get access to martial weapons?
I don't know, but I will say I've seen that question crop up like 87 times since we announced the news today.
These are simple weapons.
I can guarantee you that the team will at least strongly consider that.
I know we considered it already when the the core rulebook came out for PF2, and it was on the brink, but it was like, there's the tradition, but now.
Exactly. And that's the type of thing where, like I was kind of alluding to at the beginning of this, there are a lot of those things which we were considering. And now with 4 years of tens of thousands of people playing, sometimes we know we made the right choice by not making that decision. And sometimes I think we probably look at it and say, wow, people would have been a lot more on board with that had we done it. And I think that can't help but influence some of the decisions we'll be making for some of those quality of life type improvements.
By the way, Vanessa Hoskins wrote that, this book is a solid A, but it could be an A+ with 16 more pages.
Oh.
So just remember that, Eric. That's 16 more pages.
Maybe that means druids will be able to wear metal armor. That was another one of those traditional D&D-isms.
Right. And I just got a note from somebody at work, so if you'll bear with me, let me ask if I can say this.
Okay. Ooh. Live. Coming to you live. This is what happens when you come live.
Yes. So we'll see. I just got a missive from a little birdie.
Rage the Promise End for 5.
If that was just for my edification or if it was for the public. So I'll let you know when
There's a lot of chats going on while we're doing
breaking
this.
News, or I will just blithely ignore it and we won't talk about it again.
Don't worry.
Now forget. Everyone's going to be speculating.
I'll forget it in 5 seconds. I'll forget. Rage the Promise End for $5 said, so is this more a renaming of things? No major changes to the core classes? That actually is a very good question. Like, are the classes going to actually change?
Major changes to the core classes? I think, again, that's probably a question that could be answered with a lot more specificity and nuance by the people who are designing or going in and evaluating the classes. I think that the product announcements talk a little bit that there are a couple of classes that are likely to get a closer look than others. And I know off the top of my head that Oracle is on that list, a Champion is on that list, an Alchemist is on that list.
And Witch. So, those were the four on the product pages that they are.
So if there are kind of common complaints or concerns about the playability of a certain class or the balance of that class, we're certainly going to take the opportunity to look at those things while we're going through. But if there's a class that people are largely satisfied with, I think the changes that you're likely to see for a class like that is more like consolidation of options from various books along, there, a little bit of just general feedback. Oh, this feat could be better if we'd set it slightly differently or what have you. But I think when it comes to classes that we have subsequently heard a lot of feedback could be further improved, we will be taking the opportunity to improve those. So
it's just like errata, except for that you don't have to worry about page references, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think in it's hard for me to imagine, and again, I'm not the guy doing it, but I think in almost every instance where you would see a change to a class feature or something that would be maybe construed as a little bit more than just a simple errata, I think in every case that would be probably to uptune those things to make them, a little bit more in line with power levels of other classes, or to simplify the way if the system just in play is a little too techy and confuses people. I think those are likely to be the most significant types of changes to classes. But we're not going to be changing the classes' names. We're not going to be changing their core concepts, things like that.
I mean, Champion might have to change a little because of all the alignments that were in it, right? Or no?
I think we're going to. I think I'm getting all these interesting little tidbits that I'll drop in a second, but I think that the change to alignment will certainly require some additional context and approaches to the Champion. I don't want to get too much into the details.
I think if we have 850 people here and 150 likes. I think if we get 500 likes, we can force Erik to tell us things he's not supposed to tell us.
Well, Let's go. I have two things. I have two things that I can say according to the secret missives that I'm getting from the design team in another window. And that is, here we go. I can confirm we are going to give rogues martial weapons.
Yes.
And we are going to give wizards simple weapons. So
that's so good
for me. And so I think that's probably the extent of my spoilerific comments.
Actually, repeat that, Mark, because we might have been talking over Erik when he said that.
There. By the way, also I'm getting confirmation as well that there are going to be changes to the Champion. But again, the concept is not going to be changed.
Sure. So the repeat is that rogues are getting martial weapons and wizards are getting simple weapons. So they finally can have.
So that means you can start using them right now. Tonight's game, if you're playing a game tonight, you go and tell your GM, I heard it from Erik Mona, we're using it tonight.
You just do it now.
Erik got it from the design team, so just do it now. If you want martial weapons.
Right.
I mean, you can't sneak attack with most of the ones that you don't have, but some of the ones from new books like Treasure Vault, or if you want to use like a Kobold Garrote or something like that, then do it.
There you go. And
nothing will be broken.
And back to what you were saying before, it's this crazy idea, but you basically are coming out with new books because you've used and played this game now for 4 years, and you've heard tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of players' feedback on how to make the game better and improve it. And all you're doing is coming out with new books to make things better. To actually make the game more fun
for the OGL,
and we have to, right? Yes, so while we have to, let's make it have an upside for everybody. But again, without making such fundamental changes that it's a different game. It's got to be. And we love Pathfinder Second Edition, and so do so many other players, and more players every day.
Yeah.
So
I know how long it takes to make a book. I mean, you know that I know because I've worked at Paizo, so I can tell that it's not going to be like completely shifting a lot of things because there just simply wouldn't have been enough time to get it printed for November if it was really an edition shift like some people are worried about. It's clearly
I promise it's not an edition.
So before I even ask Captain Rylick's question, let me ask you a question, Eric.
Okay.
Did these books mess up your production schedule at all, Eric?
Yeah,
or are things just
they
like
completely
totally
train
fine?
wrecked my entire. I was so proud of myself for finishing the 2024 schedule several months earlier than I had ever been able to do in previous years, and yeah, I mean, it's fair to say the events of January and the erosion of the community's faith in the license that we had been reliant upon for over 2 decades really did force us to make some pretty significant changes to our overall schedule. But I also have to say the team of creatives who work on our products at Paizo are absolutely pros and professionals. And so there's nothing, this ended up having a shift a couple of books around. Like there's a Lost Omens book that we were going to do at the end of the year that's now just going to shift into 2024. But there aren't any book concepts that we'd been working on that are being going away. So there's a couple of things that'll come out a few months later than they ordinarily would have. And we certainly have had to spin around and figure out all kinds of crap that we wouldn't have had to do, back a year ago. And that's been disruptive internally. But in terms of how that will impact the readers and the players, I actually think it's better. So, getting everybody on board with, oh my gosh, we have an opportunity to do some fresh start stuff. We have an opportunity to really invigorate. I think there are some long-term implications, perhaps, to Paizo's entire product line based on having a more solid footing with the 2.0 engine that a lot of people haven't fully sussed out yet. But I think that's also very exciting. And so there are things that are getting pushed back a little bit, but there are also some really, really exciting things that are being pulled forward as well. So at the end of the day, I'm much happier with the 2024 product schedule than I was with my beautiful first draft of it. And I think that ultimately it will be a product schedule that is even more exciting to players and probably, frankly, better for Paizo as a business. But it would be a mischaracterization to say that our staff has not had to put in extra time, extra effort, extra hours, extra just brain power and energy into trying to kind of work our way through to come up with a plan that we're really excited about. That's been difficult, but again, hard work is often very rewarding, and I think this is going to end up being better for the game, better for the community, better for the staff, etc. So,
right. So back
my
to
staff
rapid
are
fire.
champions, and we could not do what we've done without them. In particular, in this case, I want to highlight the efforts of Logan Bonner, the lead designer for Pathfinder, who is, right at the epicenter of this. He is one of the most professional guys you could ever hope to work with, and he's got a really good mind for the rules. He's a master of this stuff. And so he and the rest of the team, Michael Sayer, James Case, Jason Bowman. It's dangerous whenever you start naming people because I know I'm leaving people out. In fact, I'm going to stop because it's really everybody at Paizo who's been working on this. This is going to touch the adventure paths. This is going to touch everything. And so everybody. Yeah. And also, by the way, not just the creative staff at Paizo, the marketing staff, the website team, the customer service, the folks in charge of our social media. Everybody has been working together really since January in a way that I'm enormously proud of, and I kind of almost get a little emotional about it because we're all in it together, and everybody has a role to play, and everybody has really been kicking some serious ass when it comes to this whole process, from stuff internal stuff no one outside the company will ever see to things that we'll be putting on the blog over the next few days. It is a full company effort. And I couldn't be prouder of my colleagues.
Even some of your Paizo partners have helped out indirectly.
Even some partners have been helpful. Yeah, absolutely.
So a quick pivot on that to a question that I've seen like 4 or 5 times, that when you're saying there are other things that this could lead to, people were very interested in the not yet answer to like how does this affect Starfighter?
Yeah.
It seems to me like there's OGL stuff that's also in Starfinder, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, Mark. That's
something would have to be done.
That is something probably will have to be done. People have been eager to see some of the core system innovations that we put to Pathfinder Second Edition applied to Starfinder or other games down the road. And I do think that this process helps to make that a lot more likely to happen.
By the way,
I have nothing to announce, which is why we say not yet.
So, by the way,
but that's already something that all the people asking the question are going to be thrilled to hear. So, thanks for that answer, Eric.
Yeah,
I will say if we get 500 likes, I have a spoiler that I can give out everyone. Haha! Believe it or not,
that terrifies me.
It is terrifying.
$4.99, everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know what
we'll see. Well,
I don't even know. I've seen the kind of things that Steven can get, though. And they're sometimes
dude,
pretty
you don't want to know. I find out everything. Captain Riley, the Brass Dragon, $5. Can you add an ability for a witch to meet their patron, like how clerics meet their god? Also, a wyvern ancestry possible for the future. I mean, we could do a wyvern ancestry, which we
he was saying Wyvern, which is a specific,
yes.
kind of
yes.
the first edition.
Okay,
the
very
Wyvern
important
ancestry.
clarification.
Sorry.
What was the first part of the question? Could you repeat that again?
Can you add an ability
the witch,
for the witch to meet their patron, like clerics meet their gods?
That is a cool idea.
Yeah.
I know the design team's watching. Maybe they think it's a cool idea too. As for the Wyvern, we'll get to them. They're on the list.
Cool.
I think I can say confidently.
Wow.
There is. I even believe that we know the time and the place. And I think that's, I'll just leave it at the time and the place, and then you can figure it out from there. But down the road, we'll get to them for sure.
Captain
Relic. And I saw a lot of Trox love as well today, weirdly. Maybe
really?
That is weird. Well, I don't know. I'm not as sure, but we love all of our children, so we will get to them for sure.
Captain Riley, he's just on fire. Can we still have a bard with a higher intelligence of 4? I'm not sure what he's asking there, but I'm not sure. Is he talking about a +4? Is that what he meant? Can you start, if I guess, with like a +5?
Oh, could you start with a higher intelligence than a +4? I don't know. I don't.
I'm presuming not, since you can't start with higher anything.
I would presume not as well, but again.
Well,
now,
unless you're going power gaming,
answer that question more expertly than I.
Unless using like 35-point build or something. Mark Hyde became a super fan and joined us, so thank you, Mark, for joining the Roll for Combat team. June Solaire wrote for $5. Will the new books be available as PDFs as part of the Pathfinder rulebook subscription series? That's actually a good question.
Okay, so let me break that up. The Pathfinder rulebook. Okay, there will be PDFs of these books.
Mm-hmm.
The exact mechanism of how these books will interact with people's Pathfinder subscriptions will be something we'll be talking about in the future, in part because I think we're still 100% solidifying the current plan. So I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis on that. But it's a topic of discussion, certainly.
Whoa, we got a crazy question. Mr. Blawface, who's a super fan, wrote, is Mark going to be working on the new books? Does this change the monsters?
I'll let Mark answer that.
No, but sort of yes, because these are the same edition as the first one. So like Logan has said a few times to me that he thought that in the end, because of the distribution of stuff with Jason on Everflame and Steven ordering the bestiary, that I wrote over half of the core rulebook. I think it's a little under, but it's still a decent amount. And enough of this is not going to change. You'll still have everything you like, more or less, from what I wrote in this, even though I wasn't working on it. So don't worry, anybody.
Credited as a designer on the book. We're not. The core of the system is not changing.
Right. He actually asked 3 questions. One of the questions was for me. Does this change the monsters for Battle Zoo? Not directly. I mean, again, all the monsters from Battle Zoo Bestiary will still work with the rules because it's still Pathfinder Second Edition. I actually asked this to Eric a few weeks ago about this very question because I was a little concerned. But, just because alignment's not in there for the updated rules doesn't mean you can't still have alignment on monsters, okay? It might not be in there going forward, but all past monsters having alignment is fine. So we might do an updated PDF if I feel it's necessary, but everything's going to work the same. So right now I have no plans
monsters
to
already use ability modifiers,
right? And the monsters
are already fine.
Yeah. They already use ability modifiers. It's really minor issues.
It'd be like changing it to spell rank when necessary. It's so small.
Right, instead of spell level, spell ranks, things like that. So if I feel it's necessary and there's a big call for it, yes. But right now, I have to see the final books, and they're not coming out for a while. So until I see all the changes, probably not, because it's still second edition. And the last question, which even I'm very I want to know as well, and I guarantee Eric will not answer. Also, since I saw it asked on Twitch, how's Dead God's Hand going, Eric?
I just posted to that thread today when I noticed people were still talking about it. Getting through this latest crisis, and not crisis, but getting through the announcement of this is one of the things that had been kind of blocking me from making further progress on it. So I'd like to get back to it soon. Me getting back to it and then it getting slated into the schedule, those are not necessarily the same thing. So I will finish it when I finish it.
So
but I will finish it. I'll say that, unless I get hit by a car or something like that.
Oh my God, don't say it. Oh man, we actually lost some super. I'm going to have to go back to find them. Any errata for alignment-free deity stat blocks? Not exactly sure what the question is.
I can tell what they mean, because when you're dealing with something like Saren Ray or Shelyn and their anathema, it's kind of presumed, since they're good aligned and they don't take evil followers, that someone who tortures dogs in a parking lot or something like that would not be allowed. So is there going to be a way that the stat blocks are adjusted to quickly and easily deal with banning that?
Logan and Jason answered that question explicitly in the previous,
there you go,
the previous chat. And if I'm remembering correctly, their answer, it was that the deities who really cared about that stuff will still care about that, and there'll be a way to explain how that works.
So we're actually taking so long, some of the super chats are scrolling off, so let's kind of go fast. Rise of the Rule Lords, good buddy, for $20 said, Shuni Heritage when?
Shuni Versatile Heritage?
Why
would you need that?
There was a moment.
A pug beast kid.
It's funny. So I have two pugs. Everybody knows this, I hope. And so for some reason, and also I do a lot with Aridin and Absalom. So for some reason, everybody thought I had something to do with the Shuni. I have nothing to do with the Shuni. They were as big a surprise for me as they were for everybody. But I will say, I kind of think they're cute. And so there was a moment where I was like, hey, Logan, looking for a small ancestry for Player Core 2, got it. And he was like, shut up. So no, they're not going to be in there. But they're still around. Everybody loves them. But I don't think there'd be a versatile heritage. That's a little weird.
Yeah.
I'm sure he didn't say shut up, Eric.
I know.
I was like, he's the most professional person that you were.
No, he didn't say shut up. He shut it down. Let's put it that way. It was very respectfully done. And by the way, it was kind of a joke that I made that recommendation anyway. So I fully was expecting.
Fair enough.
Like when you put your hand in a mouse trap and then it crashes down on your fingers and you're kind of relieved because you knew it was going to happen.
Wow, that's quite an analogy. A helpful draft for $5 wrote, detailed guidance for recall knowledge would be massively appreciated. Far too vague and critical to the game. I actually will semi-second that one, because that is probably the most used ability in Pathfinder. And
I can appreciate that comment. I can see where that's coming from. I don't know. I don't know if that's something that they're thinking about doing, or maybe there's another way to provide that outside the core rules. I'm not really sure, but that's an interesting.
I would say it's definitely in the top 3, if not number 1 or number 2 of the most.
One thing that I think is going to be pretty interesting about this whole process of now that this is out and it's not just something we're talking about internally, I think what we're going to see is that there's going to be a lot of folks who say, oh, this is really important to me, or how about this change or whatever. And a lot of times it'll be like, yep, we know, check it. But a lot of other times it might be, wow, there sure seem like a lot of people who are interested in this particular thing. And there may be opportunities to make some changes yet, even that we haven't quite anticipated.
Captain Relic for $2 said, Espu, the new Core Rooks, Bleeze, Dragon Gods are cool. So he wants
Apsu, I assume.
Apsu, the
Dragon
God.
Gods. Yeah.
He wants to
Well,
add to
another
the
thing that they talked about in the previous stream and that we'll be getting into on the blog in the near future is giving more details about some of the new dragons. We are revamping the dragons. So the Monster Core will have all new dragons. It's interesting. I don't really think there's anything particularly protectable about it, something called a red dragon who breathes fire, but all of those things amalgamated in the same exact way with the same interrelationships and all these things, that's a little bit more problematic. So we will be having brand new dragons, a brand new approach to dragons. They're going to be based on the four magic traditions, and then families within those that might have different, an arcane and occult dragon, but they're still all the I'm trying to think, but the primal dragons or something like that. So there's lots of cool stuff. In our in-house concept artist Ken Hamilton has been drawing a ton of new dragons, and when we are sooner than people think to reveal the actual covers for the Player Core and Monster Core, each of them, the illustrations by Wayne Reynolds, features one of the new dragons, so people will get
awesome.
Wow. Yeah, actually, it should be
I have
mentioned.
a weird sounding question, but yet that is still a valid question, which is: are the primal dragons the primal dragons?
Yeah, I realize I kind of stepped in a little bit.
Yeah, but they could be, right? Because they're not only are they called primal dragons, but they're very elemental and they deal with matter and things like the primal tradition. So could they be?
They could be. I mean, and that's where I kind of want to leave it for right now. So if you sort of said, well, what about the esoteric dragons? Are they occult dragons? And the answer is going to be many of them probably will be.
One of them was literally called the occult dragon.
I know. And so that one might just end up being called the esoteric dragon now that we've sort of swapped things around. We'll see. But again, some of that stuff is still in flight, especially the ones that aren't going to be in Monster Core, 1. And so again, the existing stat blocks for the existing dragons will work just fine, but we're going to kind of create a new paradigm for dragons that are uniquely Pathfinder. And I think, maybe it's in part because the core Pathfinder dragons had always been the classic SRD derived dragons, the chromatic and the metallic dragons. I feel like dragons as a whole are something that we have not done a ton with. And I think this gives us the opportunity to really get some new avenues of original draconic ideas and structures and societies in a way that we've sort of been like, well, yeah, everybody knows what a red dragon, we don't really need to do that. I think now the chances that we get to do that, and that can be really fun. So
I too may have thought there was design space for
I know you guys are like,
Paizo has not done.
Really? Could it be?
We will not be doing a dungeon class. I just want to be clear that will not be.
We already did
if you want,
you don't need to do
it. It's SRD, so you can't use it with orc stuff. I was going to say,
right, exactly.
If we republish under orc, you'd be able to include it.
You used our
the husk from Battle Zubeshir.
You already used the husk in one of your adventure paths, so
great.
Feel free to use all of our crap in your books. Let's see. Since we're getting huge changes to alignment, can we hope for a deeper dive expansion into deity pantheon lore?
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%.
Oh, well, there you go. That was an easy answer.
How's that for a lightning round? Yes.
That's great. That's fast. We can do more.
Clark Connor for $10. Will rogues get full martial proficiency? Feels like
you already answered
SRD holdover.
Next question. Yes,
I know. I'll give you the easy ones. Now let's see. The Con 64 for $9.99. Curious because I've seen some people concerned about this, and if you don't, no. But are there any plans related to hags and possibly changelings? I know there's been some unfortunate history with them.
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the challenges with the hag as a monster type is it's like almost always just predicated on like, oh, scary old woman, which is kind of not a particularly 2023 kind of a vibe for monsters. And yet, they're sort of beloved monsters. So I will say we have done some extensive work on the hags. And Eleanor Farron was just passing around some stuff in one of our chats a couple of weeks ago with some brand new types of hags that I thought were like beautiful, super, super good. The cool thing about like that sort of hag type is that there are lots of sort of aspects to it throughout pop culture and mythological lore and things like that. And not all of them are like kind of just beating the same drum of like old ladies are scary. And so, well, maybe scary is the right word, but anyway, there are, yes, we're definitely doing some new work with hags, and I believe that's going to appear in Monster Core.
So there's a question I know that you have deep to your heart, Erik.
Okay.
Will there be any new Pathfinder fiction novels reflecting on the changes of Golarion? Or are they going to have to rely on Vellum and Lace to do that on Infinite?
Well, I would encourage everyone to check out Vellum and Lace, of course. Yes. But interesting. Ask me that question again in a few months. I don't really have anything to say right now.
I know those books were dear to your heart, and you always loved working on them. So
I was, and something we talk about pretty constantly is how could we get back into that a little bit? Because there's always going to be stories that are easier to tell in that form, that maybe aren't like appropriate for an adventure, so to speak. That's one of the challenges. It's like when we sat down to do, I could do a whole different hour on this, but now we're almost out of time, but just briefly, when we sat down to do Pathfinder Tales the first time, it was very much like, we don't want to have a fiction line that is dominated by super heroic characters, like your Elminsters, your Drizzits, where your average player character felt like, well, I can't control anything. It's always up to this cast of sort of GM PCs, if you will, to handle all of the challenges of the world and what have you. We really wanted to not do that. And so a lot of our Pathfinder Tales novels are much smaller stories involving like very, very particular characters, often author, invented characters. And that has resulted in some really fun and really great fiction. But I do think at times, perhaps, we may have made a misstep there in that some of the stories that our audience most wants to know about are the stories of like some of the major historical events of our world, or like what about a Rune Lord's novel, or what about a novel that tells the story of Merciel and Kira or something like that. And we did a lot of that in the comics, but we didn't do sort of that big epic kind of novel in the Pathfinder Tales line so much. And I do think that is there's a real opportunity for something like that. And that would be an interest that I've got an interest in kind of taking things in that direction if we ever get to it. But I don't have anything to announce. I probably said too much. But it's something that I would love to get to eventually again, for sure.
We have Captain Rylick, another $5 super chat. Please tell me metallic and chromatic dragons such as chatty and lovable brass boys aren't gone.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say they're not gone, but I think it's also safe to say there are challenges related to them that we need more time to work on than we have for the first Monster Core book, and that we would prefer that the marquee, most important dragons in the world of Golarion are dragons that we made up rather than things that we got through a untrustworthy licensing agreement with a.
Okay, we have Demiurge MCK for $2 said, any errata for alignment-free deity stat blocks?
Wait, we already did
oh my gosh, we've looped around in time.
Well, you know why? Because some of them, the scrolling is a little messed up. So
right.
You just got a double one there. How about this one? I know we didn't answer this one. Captain Rylick, the Brass Dragon, for $2 said, will Mark Seifter make Battle Zoo Dragons 2 Omens Boogaloo?
I mean, we'll have to see when all of those new dragons are out, but we always have more dragon ideas that roll for combat. I think it would be more fun if other people wrote more dragons and not just me every time.
Oh, that would be true. That would be true. Yeah, maybe there will be more dragons, and maybe we've explored spaces that no one's ever thought of before. There's lots of room for lots of dragons. They don't have to always be the same chromatic ones, and
that's for sure.
I'm insane, so I'm sure there'll be more.
But just to further answer the brass dragons question, like there is a lot of legacy Pathfinder content, adventures and things like that I would love to come back to. People will always be interested, for example, in Rise of the Rune Lords as the first ever Pathfinder adventure path. We're constantly getting questions about, could you do that in second edition? I would love to find the time in my schedule and the ability to do that. And having maybe not identical creature that is the red dragon or something. Let's say there's a red dragon in one of those older adventures. I want to be able to have something that can port into that slot. And so, I would love it if in 2-3 years time, there are new Pathfinder Second Edition versions of the chromatic and the metallic dragons, but they would almost certainly be remixed a little bit. They wouldn't necessarily have all the exact same abilities and traits that they did in the SRD. That's one of the areas
we have lots of cool new dragons.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll take some of those. But I mean, I even I would like it if it's like we reprint the Dragon's Demand, for example, a very popular adventure. I would like for us to be able to say that's a green dragon. The other option is just to use the dragon's name and it's a bespoke creature, and that's fine. We'll see where we get, a little bit beyond down the road, but no, I'd love to find a way to incorporate them. I really would prefer that the main dragons in our game be things that we control 100%. Frankly, are a little bit more interesting than just like this dragon is blue.
Tell me about it. Zombol 72, $10. Will the new books be incorporated into the subscription? I can see arguments for yes or no. Guess that was kind of answered already.
And we're working on it. And we'll answer that question soon.
I thought I saw it on the website that said that you could potentially skip it if you wanted to, but it would be in there. But maybe I'm hallucinating.
I can't confirm or deny whether you're hallucinating or not. That's certainly, in the past we've done opt-ins and opt-outs. And
I may be hallucinating.
We'll see.
We're up to 500 likes.
Very.
Steven.
500 likes. All right.
Sorry, Eric. Whatever Steven has is
here's
going
my spoiler.
All right.
If those of you are interested in seeing some of these new rules in action, and seeing some of these updated rules, the upcoming Rage of Elements book, big book coming out, and I think it's your Gen Con release, right?
Or Gen Con release. And
Gen Con release. You are going to be including some of these rules right in Rage of Elements, so you'll be able to start using them right away, or not right away.
That book will be 100% compatible with the new remastered books.
That's right.
And in the few places where there are little nomenclature changes or what have you, there will be even a link to a document that takes you through some of those changes. So like our blog posts, very much PaizoCon on the 26th of May, in that weekend, the Rage of Elements and the associated download will give quite a lot of details about what's coming.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I know that they even outlined a few. I'm not going to give them all, but I know that, for example, spell rank has replaced spell level.
Yep.
So we're going to have things like that. I don't know what else I'm allowed to say, but I'm not going to say anything else. So.
Well, and as you all may have guessed, Steven was allowed to say this, even though he was being so cagey.
Well, not only was he allowed to say it, they also said it in the previous stream. So
there you go.
Boo. In that case, I'm giving you another spoiler, all right? Here's the new spoiler. Are you ready? I don't care if you like it or not. What has replaced Mephits? Do you know?
I do know. Yes.
It's something new,
Methods would be an example of a niche that we like and we want to keep. They are being basically renamed.
That's right. But that's happening.
Say the name is cool and fun. I don't know if I would offend one of my colleagues if I did it. So
I'm not going to say it either. But I do know
that'll be. I believe that's in Rage of Elements.
It's in Rage of Elements, and but there's going to be a lot of little things like that. But I'd say the new names are just as fun, if anything, more fun and more creative.
And this name is fun. It's
it's a very fun name. Yeah, it's a cool name. I actually like it more than the original one. So. We're forever teasing everyone. We're so mean.
You're such a tease, Steven.
I know.
Steven, I'm going to give you 2 more questions, and then I got to get back down to the booth.
My God. We have 500 questions here, though.
All right, Steven, do it by the most amount.
All right, we're going to go super fast,
the most amount on the super chat. Somebody asked something for $50.
Well, for $50, they wrote, hold on. $50. Don't know. I just want the monk to be an expert in unarmed. LOL. That's what he wrote.
Oh, okay.
For $50, I'll
there you
pass
go.
the design team that's certainly watching right now. So
design team.
Noted.
$10. When's the Inquisitor coming out?
Not in the core Player Core 2.
$5. Any word about drow or drow equivalent options for elves?
Yeah, I got lots of stuff to say about that, but I'm not saying any of it today.
Cool. Let's see. Organized play.
Lots of stuff to say.
How do you expect this to affect organized play? And actually, and this actually is a real question I've seen a couple times. Since you can't be evil anymore, how does that affect alignment?
Well, I think these are all really interesting questions that I want to defer to the organized play team to answer.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't presume to make those proclaimments in public. I do know, they are in contact with the rules team and are working through what's the best way to handle some of this stuff.
We have $5. Thank you for giving the rogue martial proficiency. The biggest request since day one. Will the witch have an easier way to sustain hexes?
I presume so. Again, that's probably a question that's better aimed toward the game designers.
And I think you kind of answered this as someone asked, there's going to be a replacement for alignment weaknesses, or are you just going to change them to...
Again, I think for creatures for whom that type of thing is important, there will very likely be a mechanical solution for that.
Let's see.
You have 5 minutes, Steven. Make it good.
I'm making it good. I'm going super fast.
It's been great. Yeah.
Hold on. Should we wait to purchase spell cards?
No, don't wait to purchase anything, please.
I know. I was like,
it's your
not.
only chance to get some of these spell cards. They're going to become rare.
They're going to become collector items.
That's a great answer. Because, in fact, that's a very good answer. Is that we will not reprint those spell cards. So, and yet those spells are still compatible with the revised rules or the remastered rules. So, actually, there's never been a better time than now to buy those spell cards.
Trade changes.
If you want the full set, if you want to be able to say you have them all, this is
I'll tell you, and this is not a threat or anything. It's more just like an honest admission of like where we're at with our planning. I do not have a Pathfinder remastered spell deck on the docket yet. So there will not be another set of spell cards through at least July of next year.
So Aaron Smith for $5 said, give the war priest true strike. There you go.
I've seen a lot of commentary on the war priest. I presume the design team has as well.
$2. Trait changes, stat blocks, leave out important info. That's all they wrote. Not exactly sure what they're
noted.
Okay.
Let's see. What update went through that struck you as the most or generated the most internal debate? Actually, is interesting. And
sure, it's alignment, right?
Probably alignment.
I mean, alignment is on a different. I mean, it's funny. Again, I'm probably arguably one of the grog-nerdiest people at Paizo because I've been playing the game for as long as I have. And so I'm more beholden sometimes to some of those sacred cows than maybe some of my colleagues. And so when the idea of dropping alignment first came by, I was probably one of the more skeptical folks in-house. And then I started digging into it a little more. And I don't want to undersell that, yes, there's alignment damage. There's weapon types that have to do with alignment. There's alignments that are tied into the cosmology. But when it comes to like making your character and how we discuss alignment in the core rulebook, I was really surprised that it was about this much text in the entire book. And so...
we did that on purpose in case to make it easy to remove for people who didn't want it.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret, and it hasn't been for a long time that there's a growing demographic that just doesn't care for alignment at all.
Are you going to be doing? Is it going to be a new or updated beginner's box?
Not yet. There's not something scheduled along those lines. The types of changes that are being made aren't as relevant to the opening levels of characters that are presented in the beginner box. We're really proud of the beginner box. We think it's a phenomenal introduction product. That being said, one of the lessons that I sort of took away from the first edition beginner box is that like almost all products, they have a little bit of a life cycle. And so I think that refreshing the entry level product for the brand every 3-4 years is probably a good idea. If I think back to when I came into the hobby with D&D, the old red box, there were like 5 different versions of that, even within just kind of the first edition era. And they each one, brought something different and new. And I think it's a good idea for us to refresh our kind of intro product every so often. So we are, we're talking right now about other types of intro products. I do think that there will always be a beginner box for Pathfinder.
But it sounds like a not yet.
It might change every few years. Yeah.
Are you going to update any of the actions like disarm, do you think?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Probably
but I
not.
don't know.
Even I say, do you think any spells are going to be modified to get variable number of actions? They feel so good for mages and allows a full interaction with the 3-action economy.
I think that I can answer that for myself more than for the design team, but I will say that I think in play, stuff like the healing spell or the healing, the
magic missile
and the magic missile, they're really, really fun. And I think that when we designed Second Edition originally, I think they were kind of tentative steps into what would it be like if we were to do things these way. And I think all of us who play Pathfinder Second Edition are like, oh, I know what it's like. It's super, super rad. And so as we're looking at another thing to think about with spells is analogous to monsters with the Atiad, for example. So if there's a creature that has very strong SRD associations, and then we just feel like that they're no longer, really safe to be in the current version of the game, there may be spells or even magic items that kind of fill that same niche. But the niche itself is often more or less generic. The idea of the name of a spell or a very specific element of how a spell works might change, but I think that it's very likely that there will be things that, okay, we don't have this type of spell, or we don't have this spell specifically, but we'd like to have something that does something similar. And it would be interesting, and I'm saying this just as a player, but it would be interesting if some of those niche fillers, if you will, take advantage of the unique action economy of the game a little bit more than maybe the ones that we've lost. I don't know that that's in the remit of the design team. I don't know if they're doing that, but I kind of hope they do. I think that'd be really cool.
We were definitely tentative at the beginning on multi-action and heighten. I almost went a little overly wild on those until we realized it could get too complicated.
So some of these super chats I'm going to keep because we're going to keep going after Eric leaves, and I can answer some of these, and so can.
So skip to the ones.
Yeah,
only
I've been going through them. Me and Mark can answer a lot of these.
I've got people waiting for me.
Last question. This is it. Oh boy, sorry about
all the marbles.
Not a remaster question, but a long time ago, Mr. Mona, you mentioned a new Starstone-related content. When can I become a god? Rawr.
This probably the Starstone. I don't know if this is going to give people a lot of hope, but probably the Starstone related content I was referring to was the Dead God's Hand, my adventure, which is virtually about it. So yeah, that will be coming, but unfortunately, I'm kind of pulling a Gary Gygax Temple of Elemental Evil with this.
Come on, man. Everyone wants to know. You know that. Everyone wants to know what happens.
I know.
And the only person who knows is you.
I know. And all the people who have play tested the Dead God's Hand. They know
too. Why am I not on that list? I want to know.
I'll run it for you someday.
You should have won the lottery at PaizoCon. When Linda and I applied for it, we never got it. It was super difficult.
Oh, man. That would be fun. Oh, well. So if that was
what a great final question, guys.
That's it. That's it, Eric.
That's it. A lot of these we can
answering these questions.
Yeah, a lot of these we can answer too.
Awesome. And this is just the first day. We'll continue to. I really would direct people's attention to the Paizo blog, where we'll be revealing some cool, fun stuff as soon as tomorrow. So do check back there. And then, really, I think the next biggest drop of information will be at PaizoCon, where we'll have, I think, a 2-hour panel from the design team to talk a little more specifics. And then following that, at Gen Con, when we have Rage of Elements come out, that'll be another stop. Then we'll be talking with folks and doing interviews and things all along. So even though this is, unfortunately, I've got to get down to the Paizo booth And this is the end of this interview. It's hardly the end of Paizo talking about what's coming with the Remaster Project. We appreciate everybody's interest, their questions, even to some degree, their skepticism. We've been there as we've gone through all this stuff, but we're really excited about the project. We're really excited about what this is going to mean for new Pathfinder players, for the Pathfinder ecosystem as a whole, and then going forward with the Orc license, what that's going to mean for our partners as well. So really just kind of wanted to say it's been enormously gratifying to see the growth in interest of Pathfinder Second Edition since the launch, and especially in the last few months. And so we welcome all the new players. We welcome the folks who've been with us all along, and we're committed to continuing to make Pathfinder the most exciting fantasy tabletop game in the business. And you're all a big part of that, so we appreciate it very much.
Thanks for coming on. This cleared a lot up for me, and I hope it did for other people who were themselves curious about some of these questions, some of these topics, and how big the shift would be.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Thanks.
We'll see you later. See you next time.
Oh, boy.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. So Stephen, let's get to these next questions.
Yes, we're going to stick around.
Do you have to shuffle the layout now that Eric disappeared?
I already did. I had it ready, man. I was ready.
Steven,
baby.
Look at that.
I was ready.
You're just always on the ball.
What's
the next question?
Some of these we can answer.
I think we can answer a lot of them. I can't see them all because I somehow
I'm going to go through. I'll ask them.
The moderator.
So someone wanted to know if you can get a definition of what constitutes a hostile action, especially in regards to spells.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that in the first, so in the second edition original core rulebook, it's pretty clear that that's anything that you are doing to an opponent with the intention of screwing them over, right? Or another person. So if you're trying to charm them, drop a rock on them, hit a rock that's somewhere higher up so it will fall on them. If your intent is malicious, then it's a hostile action. So I think that obviously that's not as clear cut as someone going in and writing 100 pages of legal text saying this is a hostile action, this isn't. But that should hopefully help you already. My guess is that the player core won't get too much more in depth than that.
I mean, I don't think they would.
That's my guess. Yeah. I can only guess about what they're going to do in the future, but I can answer some of these anyway. And some of them we've heard from the last stream or other places. What's the next one, Stephen? Lightning round.
Lightning round. Well, this one's easy. Will the Teen Shah be under Orc? And the other, as far as I know, once Orc is complete, everything is going to be under Orc.
Yeah, it sounds
forward.
like it. Range of the Elements is
everything.
So eventually, at some point, but here's the one that's interesting, which is Monster Core. If we look at the release dates, is later, right?
They've been moving around. I know you have a release date scheduled. That has been changed since we got it.
I've seen that shifting a lot.
It's been shifting, so I would not go by these dates.
But the Monster one is at least after the player and the GM one.
It's supposed Player Core and GM Core is supposed to come out this year, November-ish.
Right. So that should be enough to get out a book like Tian Sha and a book like Rage of Elements, which we absolutely know, and you said, and they said in the previous stream, is under the new rules. But here's the one that's interesting to me. If Monster Core isn't out until next year, what's going to go on with Adventures is actually interesting to me, because they might not have all of the monsters done yet. Maybe they'll have enough of the rules to be then maybe they'll make mostly bespoke monsters to do that. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, but I know for a fact. I mean, they're just because also we talked to Paizo a lot, and highest priority is to get Orc out and to move everything to Orc. It is beyond highest priority, so I expect that. Here's a question that I know you can answer. I spent thousands of dollars investing in Pathfinder 2e from the OGL fiasco. Now we're talking about a new version, so I just wasted all that money.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Other than the whatever you spent on the core rulebook, the game mastery guide, the advanced player's guide, and bestiary 1, which are the 4 table legs of the edition and are getting the revamp. That is probably, it sounds like, going to be more or less superseded, and a little bit of stuff from other books that are brought in, like Leshy's and Iruxi, Lizard Folk. But all the rest of it sounds like it's going to work perfectly and super complement it. So, how much is that they would have spent? It's still, don't get me wrong, it's still over $100, but
The point
it may
is
even be close to 200, but it's not 1,000. So all the rest of that's going to work.
I mean, look, we've known about this for about a month and a half or so. We've known about this. You know, some people have asked us or me indirectly, were they planning to do this all along? And from what I know, the answer is yeah, they probably were going to do this. Maybe next year that they were going to do this. And
maybe someday.
Yeah, or someday, but it got moved way up with the OGL fiasco.
They certainly wouldn't have had scramble like this. And they even said somewhere that it wasn't on their schedule. And Erik said he had to add it to the schedules and he had the whole schedule worked out. And they had to do it so quickly. So this definitely was a response to the OGL. In fact, even if they had something like this, I bet it would have been even smaller, because it's very clear from what Erik said earlier in the stream that they're very cognizant they don't want to do even a 0.5. So I'm guessing that some amount of even the changes that were made were larger than they ever would have been if it weren't for the impetus to remove OGL for safety's sake. Because it's in Creative Commons, but there's a lot of weird things with using the Creative Commons. So if the OGL itself gets in danger again, that could be a problem for Paizo.
Yeah, he was on the stream before, and Erik went on to explain that they didn't really need to use OGL. They just did because it was one of those things there's a lot of things that people just did because there was just history involved and that they felt it was part of the history of the game. And that where it came from. But to be honest, they're going away from that, and they're going to make Pathfinder its own thing in every aspect possible. Like they want this to completely be divorced from D&D and OGL in every way possible.
And as an add-on, some people, and Mark Moreland have been mentioning in chat, is totally true. Even when you count for the fact that a lot of the stuff is reprinted, all those OGL monsters and spells, you'll still be able to have them in your game if you have the old core rulebook and the old bestiary. You'll have the audio, and you wouldn't have the audio if you just had the monster core. You'd have some new monsters, but not the audio. So it's still all going to be useful, it seems like. What's the next question, Stephen? Let's see if we can answer this one.
Yes.
We got them all so far.
Someone wanted to know if they can please rewrite Golem anti-magic. I've seen that before. It's a little complex to understand sometimes.
It's a tricky one. I don't know if they're going to or not. Who knows?
We don't know that, but probably
I think it's really cool. I think that Golem anti-magic, like Logan came up with that one while we were redoing monsters, and it's a cool way to go through each golem. It makes them have a really strong identity. But my guess is that that golems might get something, because the exact type of golems that exist is something that's OGL, whereas the original golem of Prague was only clay, right? However, things like iron and stone golems have appeared in like 50 bajillion every person's like light novel and like fantasy self-pub novel about fantasy worlds, so maybe it won't. That'll be an interesting question.
By the way, if you have questions for us, and the new Battlesuit Bestiary Strange and Unusual is supposed to be coming out literally any day now. It was
supposed to come out today, but the sidebar needs an art change, so it'll come out like whenever that happens.
In a day or two. Basically. It's in a day or two. So I know a lot of people.
When the artist gets it back, I think Steven can just put it in once in the template.
Yeah, and it's ready. It's for the sidebars, and it has to do with the numbering. So it's not like, oh, this monster looks wrong. It actually messes up the entire layout. So the way it works now. So I have to wait. For those of you interested and been waiting for that. Also, for those of you interested in RPG Superstar, I know a lot of people want to see the Battlesuit Bestiary, so you can see winning monsters, and it gives you an idea of what to enter for RPG Superstar. And we still have a little bit less than a month before that ends.
So what's the next question?
I have a whole bunch. Hold on. I'm going to go.
Yes. So while you look for them, I will repeat Steven's call to join RPG Superstar at rpgsuperstar.com, and it's going to be a great time.
Let's see. What do you think about oath-based classes that is themed off things like redemption without deity titles like champion or the occult caster?
It could.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's good. Unfortunately, I will say the design team is watching this, so if you do have super chats or comments,
I think they're very unlikely to do any particular thing that someone is asking. And since the release date says November, I think they're very unlikely to be like, oh, I saw it in the stream. Now we've got to change everything to be about oaths or whatever.
Let's see. This is someone else who said very similar. They said, I never bought second edition because we had AD&D. I never bought 3.5 because I had 3.0. This is a hard thing to sell to people like me.
I think that's great. I think that's fine because the way they're doing it this time is that's okay. You don't need to buy it. You can keep buying all of the new products. You might want to look on Archives of Nethys, like at one point or whatever, to see like what some of the terminology is. And it sounds like it's going to work great. They're not going to redo the math and suddenly like all of your characters are missing everything because they're at 2 less accuracy than the characters in the other thing. It sounds like you don't need it. Whereas in 3.5, you kind of did need it because enough things shifted. Yes, they were technically compatible with each other, but if you were going to keep buying the 3.5 books, a lot of things were going to get a little bit squidgy and some significant rebalancing happening on certain spells that would throw you off.
So here's one. I know we can't answer it, but I do know. Is there any plans to include things currently in Starfinder to Pathfinder Second Edition?
Eric said, we talked about this, but it was the answer about Starfinder was not yet. Right. And then Eric even went further in our stream than before and said that like, it sounds like it's something that they're wanting and planning to do, but it's just not they're not there yet, right? They don't have anything to announce yet.
Well, I think they're asking including. They're saying currently in Starfinder.
Oh, I thought they were saying to use. No. I mean, there's the Android. They're saying use Pathfinder 2 stuff in Starfinder. Well, here's my thing, though, right?
Yeah.
Here's something I've always thought, which is if they put Pathfinder 2 rules, mechanical innovation into Starfinder, this will be like the sort of blow your mind question. What's to stop you, right? What's to stop you from using things cross between them? Yes, Starfinder does have some assumptions that are very different than Pathfinder, where it's like poisonous environments, anything that a biosuit can protect you from don't matter. That was something that was a big debate at Paizo when I was working on Starfinder and the Starfinder team were there. It was like, well, we have to move all this stuff to first level that's like really powerful in Pathfinder 2 and would be an interesting encounter where it's a toxic cloud, because otherwise you can't even do the adventure on some of the core planets for Starfinder, right? So that and flying would have to shift in level drastically. But other than that, who's to stop you from taking something from Starfinder if they re-release it and putting it into your PF2 game if they're using very compatible rules? And we're not going to stop you on Roll for Combat.
Yeah, and to blow your mind even more so, if you go back, it's a podcast. In PaizoCon 2019, I ran a one-shot at PaizoCon with the Roll for Combat team and the Order of the Amber Die team playing Starfinder, and they went to Galarian World, where their Starfinder characters played Pathfinder characters inside a world like Westworld.
There's an even wilder one than that. At one point, somebody, I think, ran an adventure where some of the characters were Starfinder, some were PF1, some were PF2, and some were playing the adventure card game.
Oh my God. Now that's the wild.
That is the wild. I can't remember who it was, but that is the wildest thing ever. They were drawing the cards on their turn and doing the adventure card game.
Well, this one was fun because we have our guys who are playing their characters, their Starfinder characters, and this one we're doing our Starfinder Adventure Path. And then we had the Order of the Amber Die play the Starfinder NPCs. And then at the end, they were like meeting them because you ever go to medieval times, and afterwards you can meet like the actors, and they're like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Jim. Yeah, I specialize in in
Valeros. I play Valeros every time.
Exactly, and they had different accents, and it was great.
Back in those days, Valeros was a guy, and he just liked to drink. Now I actually am a teetotaler, so I'm using root beer in this mug.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was actually really funny. So what's the next question? That. Let's see. Captain Rylick, who's sent us like 10 super chats, man. Thanks. $5. Since I type us in a message, could we have an oath-based class with redemption and stuff that has nothing to do with deities and occult caster, maybe?
So probably not.
Yes. Well, we'll put it.
We now know what they've put into it, but the chances of them putting literally exactly what you wanted is like winning the lottery, right?
Yeah.
So like it's possible, but probably not.
And Billy A. Helms said, design team put in monster immunities and stat blocks.
I think they're talking about certain creatures.
Well, right. Like when they say ooze immunities, and you got to go then cross-reference ooze.
I thought that was more of a PF1 thing. I thought they don't just say ooze immunities anymore. I thought we got rid of that because it was too.
There's still a little bit of
like gelatinous cube should have all the immunities listed, right? It doesn't just say ooze immunities. Yeah, it does. Acid, critical hits.
Oh, it does. Okay, critical hits. Okay.
Oh, but there's one thing that didn't.
Okay, what is that?
There was one thing where it sometimes did and sometimes didn't, and so Logan and I had a discussion, and he said, "Let's not ever include it." Mm-hmm. I think, which was, or maybe we did go back, but it was bleed. Sometimes just was because the definition of bleed says if they don't have any blood or like oily fluids or something that can drip out of them, then they just automatically are immune to it in the description of bleed. Therefore, many creatures didn't have bleed immunities. And it's not a universal immunity for undead because vampires do have blood and they should be able to bleed. Yeah, so then we had to go in and decide whether we would remove it from all of them and just assume that immunity kicked in, or put it in all the ones that were supposed to not have it. I can't even remember what we did.
In fact, someone even wrote that. Brandon McCoy wrote, RE missing info, some traits unclear whether they grant immunities, i.e. undead, construct, sometimes the rule and effects like bleed and not explicit in the creature block.
It's literally bleed, and I think only bleed, which is in the definition of bleed, so arguably you don't have to include it, but I'm a fan of including redundant information if it makes it easier, and I just don't remember what we did.
And so
I'm guessing that we must not have included every time if people are asking about whether it'll be in there.
So Rise of the Rule Lords sent a $10 super chat. I'm not sure what he's asking here. Maybe you know.
What is he asking?
Will we get a single pink dolphin to replace the monsters you have to take out?
I don't really get that, but we have a reddish pink dolphin, Boto, which is one of the Eldamon in our Eldamon book that we're doing. It is based off like the pink Amazon River dolphin that also has Brazilian myths of like the Encantado and things like that, which is, he must be asking about that river dolphin that has the myths, but there's probably a meme or online thing to it that he knows about that I don't.
We just don't know.
He's much more online than I am with looking at things.
So Samu asked for $1.11. Can we solve the Alchemist triple item bonus? Actually, we have bomb, mutagenic, and Alchemist goggles. Change mutagenic status would be awesome.
I mean, that it is doing what it's intended to do, which is not combining. It's not intended to combine. It's already the mutagen bonus can go one higher than any other item bonus can. But the bomb bonus was meant to just make sure that you didn't fall behind, even if you didn't get something like those goggles. They're definitely, absolutely not intended to combine. That would be absolutely outrageous if you had a +4 additional status bonus on top of everything else.
Cybersmith Videos said, will stat blocks have sections for recall, knowledge, success, and crit? You know, it's one of those things, because I've seen other games do that in the past, where they say, you know, more like if you succeed or you crit, this is what you get. But the problem is there's no room. And you know what? The DM has to do a little bit of work. And I don't think they will, just because there's no room in the stat block for something like that.
Right. I want to make it clear that who knows if we even have mutagens that look the same in the final go. I don't know what's going to happen in that player core too about the mutagens, but I would kind of be shocked and maybe a little bit appalled if they turned all three of those into different types of bonuses that combined, because it would mean that the alchemist suddenly had a circumstance bonus and an item bonus and a status bonus and had way more bonuses than everybody else. It just doesn't seem like something that they would do because of how weird that would be.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Maybe they'll do something else where it doesn't rely on bonuses, but relies on weird special abilities. For example, it could be anything. the design team and everyone else who, as Eric said, a lot of people are working on it together. That makes sense for how fast they had to put things out. They're super creative. They're awesome, and they're going to come up with something great to put there.
Jackson Walsh said, will culture-based ancestry features such as weapon familiarity be divorced from ancestries? If will culture be a new part? Yes.
I got an answer to that being online thing about the dolphin. The single pink dolphin was the only thing that was added to Monsters of the Multiverse, and everything else was reprints.
Oh, got it. I had no idea what they were talking about. I mean, this is a question we can't answer, is if culture will be a new part of character creation.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
right? I mean, culture is always a very important part of building your character, even if it's not like a mechanical thing. I think, personally, from my perspective, trying to mechanize your culture too much quickly gets uncomfortable. And it's something that already, even just the human feats that have come out that are culture-based gets... it can make you a little uneasy to mechanize your culture. So I feel like having it be a role-playing component that's strong and in your character is good. But if you get it too mechanical, you start asking some questions that start getting into either uncomfortable places, or like, is your min-maxing person who doesn't respectfully play someone from mixed cultures going to still try to claim that their character is from 20 different cultures so they can combine these 20 feats and build a monstrosity in a way that's culturally insensitive? So still, we don't know. We're not going to know for sure until we see what Paizo does.
This one I can't answer. Chad King for $5 said, will all the classes be combined into the remastered core book, such as Psychic Summoner example, instead of being multiple books? No, they're not going to. They literally don't have enough room, and they're already announced Player Core and Player Core 2. And the Player Core will have... I believe they announced this in the other stream. It's going to have expanded Bard, Cleric. This is not final. Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, and Wizard. And then Player Core 2 will have others. And so, no, you can't fit them all, because that would then be an 800-page, 900-page book. And the whole point, one of the main purposes of this is to actually have books that are 400-ish pages instead of 600, 800-page books. In fact, you don't know about this, Mark. I'm going to tell you a story. If you watch yesterday's stream with myself and Derek, in the stream, I tell a story of how I was involved and my wife managed to get a suspect arrested who was wanted by the local police, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Canine Unit, the Aerial Unit, and the county police, who rang our doorbell in the middle of the night. And I almost had to use the core rulebook to defend myself. That's how thick
it will
this
block
is.
bullets.
Well, you said that. I said if there's, as Derek said, he goes, there's not a lot of books I'd probably take to try to block bullets, but this would be one of them. I almost had to use this as a weapon to defend my home. This just happened on Monday night.
I
in
addition to everything else that happened on Monday night, you got a FBI most wanted person who came to your house on Monday night.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me this.
I know. You have to watch this.
What all is happening to you, Steven?
And there's the crazy part. I was preparing to play Pathfinder.
Okay, hold on, Steven.
Yes.
I know I've been on Paizo's side about the Player Core and Game Master Core split and thought that people who said, oh, no, this is asking for more money. It's not, because there's 4 books before and there's 4 books now. This is a really significant situation where you had an advantage for having the core rulebook that the Player Core does not have.
That's true.
Which is if an FBI most wanted person comes to your house, you're not going to be able to block bullets with the Player Core. I think that. So everyone, make sure you get your core rulebook so you can protect yourself.
Well, I looked at I'm like, I have a lot of big books. That's the biggest one I have, and it's right here on the shelf. And the front door is right next to my office, and I was preparing. I was live with my friends. We're getting ready to live stream, and then at 8:20, someone rang the doorbell, and it was this guy. And then we had to call the police, and they arrested him. It's crazy. You could hear the whole story. Go to yesterday's stream, and I tell the whole story. Or you can actually watch the stream on Monday night of Agents of Edgewatch, and I also tell the story. Then I tell it because it actually happened and the cops are still here.
Okay, there you go.
I told you, my life is insane. And
what's the next question?
People don't believe how insane my life is. Now you get to see it real time. It's insane. I have the craziest life.
There you go.
Do you know how they're going to replace alignment damage?
Well, they mentioned there's something called holy and unholy, although they didn't make it clear what that is. But I would imagine that might be a way to help.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're going to get rid of alignment. A lot of what I know, and again, this is us just speculating, but we know a fair amount, is they're renaming things to fully divorce it from D&D and the OGL. For example, like, spell rank is replacing spell levels, things like that. So that's that's thing. And alignment, for better or for worse, has been a major part of Dungeons and Dragons forever, and it is core to the D&D. However, you can rename things and have the same functionality. Instead of having it instead of being evil, you can have unholy. Instead of having good, you can have holy, and that is enough to divorce you from the original wording, but still have the desired effect, if that makes sense. So I have a feeling they're going to go in that direction, is that it will not be directly that's, and Erik mentioned that it's like not every single creature needs to have holy and unholy. The same way not every creature needs attack of opportunity, but the ones that need it will have it.
The thing to watch will be whether chaotic and lawful is just ditched, or if they get rid of, or they put like endarchic and axiomatic to go with holy and unholy. So they haven't said yet. We'll watch. We'll see.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're Roll for Combat. We report on breaking things. So we'll report to you if we find, if we hear and find out. You can stay tuned here. What's your next question, Steven?
That actually
we've actually given somewhat answers on a lot of these. Even if some of them
we actually know a lot more than we think.
Yeah. What's the next one?
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm actually going back and forth. Is Nethos teasing Asmodeus about alignment change?
I think Asmodeus is not going to be teased. Asmodeus is going to be pleased, except for really in world they're not going to say anything changed, right? But if it did, Asmodeus would be like, I knew this would happen. In fact, I wrote many contracts that were dependent upon alignments that now that they're gone, suddenly there's people's souls belong immediately to me. So Asmodeus probably just suddenly tricked people and got a lot of contracts in.
So this is a weird one because
Aaron
Mulder wrote, this is very hypothetical, but could someone publish Pathfinder Third Edition versions of OGL monsters and spells?
I think they mean remastered versions of OGL monsters and spells. I imagine that you could, but that it would maybe be a waste for you to do it because everything is so similar that it'd be like you publish a new, I don't know what spells they're removing. Okay, I have literally no idea. But let's say they remove Acid Arrow because they decided it wasn't cool enough to rename it and that it was too close to Melf's Acid Arrow. For the sake of argument, let's say that they do, even though they might keep it because it doesn't have a Melf in it. So if you did put out an Acid Arrow that just said rank 2, and then all the other rules were listed exactly the same, would anyone want to buy that book? It says rank 2 instead of level 2. But if you already own the core rulebook, I mean, I guess maybe your customers are people who don't want to use Nethys, people who don't own the core rulebook, and they don't want to buy the core rulebook. They just want to see which ones got removed.
So I have to take care of something, but I just sent you 2 super chats, Mark. If you want to read those.
You sent 2 super chats.
And you can take care of those. I'll be right back, everyone. And Mark, you can take care of them.
Okay, I will answer those. So it looks like there was a chat that asked, will there be a good holy dragon to replace Apsu? And they didn't say they're removing Apsu. So I don't think we know that Apsu is even being removed. And then Vinny Durg for $5 said, any possibility for a first-party dragon ancestry and not kobold? I mean, I think that seems pretty unlikely. I mean, it's maybe even more unlikely due to the fact that there's already the Battle Zoo Dragon one out, but it was already pretty unlikely to begin with. But you never know. So who knows what happens in the future? Things change, things shift, and what people want to make changes too. And you never, like for instance, Steno, right? Like when I put those in Bestiary 3, and I got a lot of support from other designers who are like, yeah, let's do it. And people were excited about possibly making them an Ancestry. But then after that, trying to get them into any books with Ancestries, everyone was like, oh, no, this isn't the right time. Well, let's not do it. And there didn't seem to be a place for them. And who knows? And they might come out from Paizo. They're the only ones we've done in Roll for Combat that might come out for Paizo, in which case you can use both, because their feats from both will probably be good and work well together. But I would say that is my answer to those. And the other question that I was talking about, Zolgathor, I think Linda and I are going to move our Arcane Bark streams to be earlier now that we're in the East Coast, because 10 p.m. would be a weird time for us to start. It'll depend on whether or not Linda is able to work with Paizo about the Paizo core hours, because she still works there. The Paizo core hours usually stop at a certain time. That is also so late Eastern that maybe they'll be able to like get a 1 hour stretch. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us move it to like 8 p.m. Eastern if Linda doesn't have to be working for sure, possibly at meetings up till 8 p.m. Eastern. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm gonna go to super chats I can find. Now Steven can find others, because somehow right before this stream elements kicked me out of the thing that shows like all the super chats and only the super chats, but I can still see some that are in the chat. So it looks like there's I see the alchemical triple bonus. So maybe I can see all of the ones that Steven hasn't done yet. Let me see about this. Oh yeah, he totally did some of these out of order, didn't he? I see the OGL spells. I see the Archives of Archives of Nethys has a section for the original rules, such as alignment, for those of us not upgrading for the classic Pathfinder 2 books. I thought I saw something somewhere that said that the old versions aren't going down from online resources, but that could also be something I was hallucinating. So check to see. But if that's true, then you would imagine it would be there. And that alignment in particular just seems smart for it to stay up as if you want to use it, this is what it is. Even if certain things changed and might be confusing to
I'm back. We actually did all the super chats. We did all the super chats. I think I've
caught up on super chats.
We did them all. We actually got every single one. Yeah.
We did all of the super chats. Well, you missed that one that I just did.
Which one?
Then in that case. But in that case,
I have a thing I can check them all as we do them.
It looks like we got all of them except for that one, and you probably just didn't see that one.
Well, I can go out of order because I checked them. There's a tool I have.
Yeah, I noticed that you were doing them out of order there. Yeah. And Guitar Guy Nick is asking me if I know about the focus point change. I have no idea.
Oh yeah, I did see that. There was a question about how they said they're going to redo focus points.
They just said they're going to change focus points.
Yeah,
I have no idea what they are, and I'm very interested. I guess I hope it's not that you can just get 3 of them right away at second level and then use 3 every encounter and fully refocus and get all 3 back, because that seems like they would be kind of become cantrips at that point. But anything else that they could do, I'm eager to see what it is and excited, because there's a lot of really cool things that could potentially be done.
Hey, here's a question, because you wanted to, and they ask about Swashbuckler because you wrote that one. Did you see that? Do you think classes like Swashbuckler will get automatic skill progression for acrobatics like the Theramage got?
I actually don't know, because, there were a lot of classes that I was kind of interested in putting some automatic skill progression in, but I know that was something that the team as a whole was very reticent to do. For example, Inventor, you may have noticed the playtest version did not get crafting as an automatic progression, I think. And that was one where I wanted to put it in there because you kind of need it to use all of your abilities. But that was one that playtesters all asked for it, and we did put it in. And then classes in the future, like Thaumaturs, were able to get some more progressions in it. So I'd say, who knows? Like, some classes have changed since then. The design team composition is always different. So you never know what's going to happen, but the only ones they said will have substantive changes are the Witch, the Oracle, the Champion, of course, because of alignment, and the Alchemist. So I would expect then that there won't be huge changes to the other ones that were not listed, because they were not listed.
I do have a few things that I can tell you. First of all, someone asked, is Battlezoo going to be on Nexus? Stephen Walters. And I said, I'm actually going to talk to Nexus, but you know what just came out today? Fantasy Grounds released Battlezoo Ancestry Dragons for Pathfinder Second Edition.
Oh, that's cool. I know that's been a while in the making.
Well, I won't get into it because Fantasy Grounds does things their own way.
They do it themselves, and there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, that's kind of, they do their own thing, and I everything else I control. Basically, the way it works is I create everything for Foundry, and I create everything for Roll20, and then I publish it. Fantasy Grounds does it themselves, so I have very little power over how it's created. And yeah, anyhow, there's the link. If I know a lot of people have been asking for that. The good news is Fantasy Grounds is starting to get on the ball again because they started to realize how popular our content is, so they are starting to work on it and
that's great.
It done.
So I don't see any other super chats.
There's no more super chats.
There's still a lot of other questions.
There's a lot of questions. That
have been asked, yes. But I think that it's going to be impossible to get to everything. Now, there were some interesting ones about like people asking, what does this mean for third parties? I kind of wanted to see what Erik's take was on that, but it was never a super chat, and we didn't quite get to it. That would have been my next one to ask him.
Two big third parties creating content right now, and us and Legacy, and that's kind of it.
And what?
And legendary games, and
yeah, but there's a lot of small third parties that are making really great stuff. So like the question is, what is it
for Infinite? Definitely,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And their stuff is awesome. Now, so I think what it means is that things are not going to change very much.
No,
right? So
as soon as,
if anything, we can make a new dragon book that has the new dragons in it.
Yes. And one thing I wanted to mention is that when I first heard this, and then he said alignment's coming out, the very first question I said to Erik was, wait a second, because this is like, I was like literally finishing up Battlezoo Bester. I'm like, we just put all the, alignments in there. Like, what do we do now? And, I have all these books with alignment, and they're like, you can keep it. You don't need to take it out. It's just Paizo is choosing to take it out, but you can do whatever you want. And all of our past monsters and all of our past books, and they have 4 years worth of books,
right?
They still have it, and that's probably not coming out.
I mean, you can
soon.
do both. We can publish going into the future and keep the alignments, and put in those role playing notes section that was going to replace it to say stingy and I don't know, like stingy and disorganized is what we think about this character. But that can be in there too. Whatever they're using to replace it, we can do anything. Also, Mr. Bedoin, how I would fix which is however my friends and colleagues on the design team fix which.
Yeah,
there's no way I'm going to tell you a different thing than that. That would not be a
Chris
good
Ward,
idea.
You'll do the Fantasy Ground stuff for me, and then get in touch with Fantasy Ground, because I know the way it works is they have like a bounty system where Fantasy Ground says, okay, who wants to work on this? Because this is what happened to me, is that they're like, and then someone grabbed Battlezoo Ancestry Dragons, and it took them a year to get it done, and I couldn't take it away from them because they got it. So,
it's such a weird system.
It's a weird system. I will gladly, starting going forward, not just have them give it to people and then I'm held hostage. I'd rather give it to people who can do Fantasy Grounds. Trust me, I'd be very happy to do that. Yeah, I think I have to go in a little while, but let's see, what else do we have here? Do any specific questions? A lot of questions about Dragon Gods overall, since they're getting new dragons. I don't know if they're going to be talking about Dragon Gods. They're right now focusing on new dragons and to divorce themselves from any OGL D&D dragons.
Yeah,
and as they said, they're going to be putting, I guess, a dragon on every one of these books. These books are mock-ups, by the way. In fact, all these covers are from Pathfinder First Edition covers. So you're like, none of these covers are real. These are all mock-up covers. They will obviously announce and release the new covers. Usually, just FYI, covers are one of the very last things that you get done. Usually because you want to make sure the content from the book is on the cover, and sometimes you don't know the content. And second, Covers take a long time to do. Okay, they're the hardest of all full page to do by a mile. So they are done very late. They're usually as late as possible, sometimes only a couple of weeks before the book actually goes to the printer, the covers are done. So all the covers you see are completely mock-up, and they're not.
Jackson Wall said their super chat was misread due to the dolphin interruption.
Oh, okay. What was it? What's this?
I don't know, because you're the only one who has the really old super chat.
Well, you can
I can't get to it because they kicked me out of Stream Elements moderator.
No, just Billy just reposted.
Oh, Billy reposted it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just repost. No, just repost it. You don't need super chats. Just repost it now.
Okay,
and
let's see.
Let's see.
Where did Billy repost it?
And also Jackson Walsh.
No, Jackson Walsh is the one who said that their super chat
the dolphin misinterruption. Sorry,
got misread because of the dolphin.
Question was,
where is it?
How long after the books? Blah, blah, blah.
I don't see Billy reposting it, by the way.
Well, we're waiting for him to do it. If Billy reposted. Yeah, just repeat your question. I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, there's questions." Dude, there was a lot of super chats. I tried to get them all, and I had to go fast because Eric's like, "I gotta go," and I'm like, "Dude."
And especially since Stephen was going out of order, it would be easy
Billy
to miss one.
Trait changes, stat blocks leave out important info. He wrote that question. He also wrote design team put monster immunities in stat blocks. And
is that the one that Jackson wrote?
Those are Billy Helms. Billy Helms wrote 2 super chats. Those are the only 2 I can find.
No, but Billy said he would like Jackson's super chat reread.
Oh, Jackson.
Not Billy's.
Oh, okay, Jackson. Jackson. He wrote, will culture-based ancestry feats such as weapon familiarity be divorced from ancestries? If so, will culture be part of a new character creation? We did mention. We did talk about that.
Yeah, you only. I think it only got read as is culture going to become a bigger part of character creation.
Maybe it was cut off. Sorry.
Whereas this is talking about will culture-based feats be divorced from ancestries? So we don't know what will happen. Maybe just those feats will get cut entirely. Maybe they'll stay the same. Maybe they'll get shifted around. The only thing we can speculate on is what we said before. Like, I know that making culture be mechanically coded is fraught and quickly gets fraught. So I doubt that culture will be a mechanical step. I think it will probably continue to be a roleplay step because it just gets fraught really quick.
Yeah.
And so what that means for feats that have some cultural interplay to them, we'll just have to see from Paizo.
We also have a question, and you can answer this one. Will the shield system be fixed so non-magical shields will survive more than 1 or 2 hits? I know where you can get all new shield system. Where's that?
I mean, you can use the one from Battle Zoo Bestiary if you want. It scales from level, but that's not non-magical.
True.
Right? It is upgrading it. I have a different question, which is it like, do we want like the piece of wood you got off the ground at first level to not break in 1 or 2 hits from like Tree Razor or the Tarrasque? Or I guess Tarrasque is probably OGL. So Tree Razor or the Jabberwock? Like, that's an interesting question. And while certainly there is the case to be made for a generalization of being able to scale up shields, which Battle Zoo Bestiary's refining system does let you do, but like, if I don't think there's necessarily a reason why it's bad that like a basic shield that's non-magical is just made of wood or steel can be broken by like the Jabberwock attacking you with its claws that snatch, or the Tree Razor using his black axe on you. But I mean, your mileage may vary. If you want it to be able to survive anything, no matter what, except for a crit, use the playtest version with dents. I like the dent version. Actually, one of the reasons we switched out of it is players were upset that if Tree Razor hit your basic piece of wood with his giant axe and didn't crit, he couldn't break it. And they're like, he should be able to. It's his ridiculous artifact axe. And we asked on the playtest what people wanted in like the survey, and they said, yes, we want it to use hit points and stuff so that it can break more easily. And so if you want it to scale, use Battle Do Bestiary, but keep in mind that the fact that a ridiculously overpowered opponent can break a really crappy shield is what people asked for in the playtest.
So
I like dense. It was cool.
By the way, Captain Rylick chatted with me on Discord and actually said his clarification for the int bard is with ability scores going away, can we still have a high int bard or high charisma witch for roleplay character? And for
ability scores are becoming ability. It sounds like are becoming just using the modifiers.
Yeah,
so you can do whatever you
all
want.
All they're doing is they're getting rid of. Right, they're getting rid of the scores.
You don't have an 18. You have a +4.
Correct.
You don't have a 16. You have a +3 because those odd numbers didn't do anything. Like a lot of us wanted to remove that already, but there's a lot of tradition to it. People liked it that were coming from previous editions that had familiarity to it. There were a lot of good reasons to keep it too. But we did remove it in the beginner box because in the beginner box, there's no reason to keep it since there's a new players. So they probably aren't used to seeing those other ability scores. It wouldn't be confusing to them.
The only problem is, how does it work when you go from, when you level
18
up?
And you go up?
Yes.
They'll probably come up with a thing where you like add a dot to it or something like that on your character sheet.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're, okay, I'm not certain.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's like a little
It would probably be a mathematical snafu if it just was like, oh well, just goes to +5
they can't
now,
do that.
and now you can get
impossible.
to a +5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in your ability score, something like that.
Yeah.
I doubt that that's what's going to be the answer. It certainly would not be telling the truth about keeping the math of the game so that you could run with both things, because the people in the new system would be drastically more powerful. And it's not an exaggeration to say drastically. That would probably increase damage by 33% for martial characters alone, for example. So I really highly doubt that. That being said, I don't even know, right? It's possible some things I really highly doubt. They're like, oh, we're actually doing this, even though Mark just highly doubted it and put a reason why it would be a problem. Whoops. So, like, I really, really highly doubt that's going to be the answer. But otherwise, they'll come up with a good way, because the Paizo design team is awesome and they know how to make a great game and make it so that you can understand it. Like Logan, his specialty is taking mechanics and putting them in a way that's easy for people to understand. So I'm sure that people are going to be able to get it. Faye Lynn says that Jason and Logan specifically said it still scales the same after 18. Well, great, good. That puts to rest my non-fear, because I knew they weren't going to change that because it would really mess up the game. But it puts to rest any possibility of it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
See, I told you that they knew that there was no way they were going to actually do that.
Yeah, and more importantly, I mean, this has been discussed quite a bit. I mean, after the OGL kerfuffle, and I was talking to Eric a lot, like they for many, many reasons, for better, for worse, they have to just divorce themselves from OGL and D&D, and they just have to become their own game.
And related to this, Dr. Waits for $5 said, I thought I was getting a stable system, not to get a new system by this winter. They're pulling a WotC new edition and all but name. And like you're saying, Steven,
they're not,
but they have to change it, because
they have to.
The OGL, even with Creative Commons, the OGL is not safe after what happened. They could still pull the OGL and keep the Creative Commons. The Creative Commons requires a lot of different things. It doesn't have the share alike clause in it that the OGL did. And so is easy to use the Creative Commons if you are like a small person who, not a small person, a small publisher, like a little publisher that just wants to do your own thing on 5e. Easy. Creative Commons, that'll work. But if you're Paizo and you're going to make your own system with share alike and a Pathfinder licensing system, that gets tricky on Creative Commons in some ways, from what I've heard. They probably need the OGL or at least something similar like the Orc. And now that OGL was in danger, it is if that got pulled away later, at that point, it would be more of like a, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So I get how they have to change it so that it can work with the Orc.
Yeah, they can't trust anything, and they have to be their own system. And they're just being super safe. And if it makes you
Billy
feel...
Helms had a great point. This is a move towards stability, since the OGL is unstable.
This is a move towards stability. And let me just finish my quick point.
Yeah.
I have a whole page that I can't share with you of the changes, and almost all of them are just wording.
You mean the ones from Rage of Elements, or all the changes?
No. I don't have all of them, but I have Rage of Elements and I have others that I've heard of just through the grapevine. They're almost all text changes, and that, for example,
so it would be like change the name of method to whatever, like you said earlier in the stream,
or spell rank from spell level, or
that sounds like it's just cover themselves from the OGL debacle, and then make some quality of life changes that probably everyone will like for errata beyond that, right?
Yeah, and that's really a big part of it, is that there's just certain names that unfortunately are heavily tied to D&D that are part of Pathfinder, such as alignments and score system, which really has been around since D&D's inception. So you can, but the plus is that you can't copyright the +1, +2, +3. That's not something that can be protected. But can you argue that, well, an 18 is protected? You could, and that's why they got to remove it. That's really it. It's like it could be argued that is unique to D&D, and they have to remove it. But it's not going to affect the rules. It really won't.
It's just going to be safer from a legal perspective to remove anything, because nobody's ever tried to bring something like this to court. So it would come down to probably a preponderance of similarities where they're like, okay, sure. You know what?
And put yourself...
This thing is probably not on copyright. Like Eric said, a red dragon that breathes fire. Well, you know what? I can name 10 franchises that have a red dragon that breathes fire. But when you get a red that breathes fire, and a white that breathes ice, and a blue that breathes lightning, and a green that breathes poison, and a black that breathes acid, suddenly that is a preponderance of similarities, and it can start seeming more like a thing. And I think they're just trying to make it safe from not having too much of that.
Their entire company, Paizo, does nothing but do this. They have 100+ people who literally publish games for a living. They have to protect themselves, okay? This is necessary and required. So they can sleep at night, that they know that their game is 100% theirs. And they're doing everything in their power to make this not 2.5 or 3.0. This is just updated version, smoother version. You get better classes, kind of like Unchained, and better rules that are now going to be smaller and more compatible. But can you still use everything else? Yes. Is everything else still going to be free and on Archives of Nethys? Yeah. So I understand people might be a little upset.
On Nethys. You'll find it. It's going to be posted for free.
Yeah.
And Phelan pointed out it was already kind of announced when the OGL went down in Orc. Paizo kind of said, that according to Phelan. Now, I will admit that there was at least one statement that was not like an official Paizo announcement that a Paizo staffer said during the time, where it kind of claimed that Pathfinder was already almost completely divorced from the OGL. And when I read that, I was like, well, there's some monsters and spells that are going to have to be renamed or removed.
Yes.
It was not an official Paizo thing, just with like one staffer and like a Reddit post or something like that. And but yeah, I mean, this was completely clear at the point of saying that it was moving for the OGL to Orc. At least to those of us who I guess know which things are in the OGL and would have to be cut, that at least some number of pages of the bestiary would have to change it to something else or have renames on things.
Yeah, and I mean, yes. They're very much going to have to change things. It's just the way it is. I have to go in a few minutes, so we have one more super chat. Word changes are fine, but I hate unnecessary errata.
Yeah, I get that. Some people really, really want errata to things that are not making their play experience good. And so you have to balance that by doing enough errata that you cover things that are really making people's play experience not good, while not doing so many that it just makes people get errata fatigue and be like, why is there so much errata? And I think Paizo does a great job at that. If anything, I think that the new errata cycle that they talked about of twice a year is really good, because the boom bust of when does it sell out was probably sometimes did make it hang for a while, even after, everyone was really waiting for the answer.
And Captain Rylak, the Brass Dragon, What will fill the void of the chatty brass boy?
Dude, you asked this question like 3 times and Eric already answered it.
He answered again. He just super chatted it.
No, I'm not saying you, Steven. I'm saying to him. He asked this question 3 times. Eric already answered that. He said they'll go to it later on and figure things out, but they're working on the new ones to be the marquee dragons. I'm going to tell you this,
and you've seen them too. I've seen the pictures of the new dragons, and you've seen the pictures of new dragons, Mark, and they're pretty freaking sweet. They look awesome. I thought they looked amazing, the new dragons. They look very badass, I'll tell you that much. They don't look like just happy-go-lucky dragons. So,
I think they're going to be really cool.
You're going to like them,
I'm very excited to add them to to make eternal versions of them that you can play as PCs.
Yeah. So Captain Raylick, if it makes you feel any better, I've seen several pictures, and they look awesome. I mean, they look mean, lean, deadly. They look like stealth fighters, kind of. You know, if you could take a fighter jet and turn it into a dragon, that's what these things look like. They look good, like really good. And I also like that they use designs I haven't seen before. They definitely are going, and you have to think about that. They have to do everything outside the box and really distance themselves, and that includes monster design. So think about that for a second. So you have a lot to get excited about. So
people are comparing it to 1D&D, and I feel like 1D&D, what we've seen already from an Arcana, they're making way more changes.
No. This is not 1D&D.
The classes than this. Like every class in 1D&D is getting major revamps. They're adding in like the feats. They're making their backgrounds in 1D&D be more like Pathfinder backgrounds that give a feat with them. They're changing like different dragon types and not dragon types. They're adding the different spell types that are like a little more like the traditions in Pathfinder. Like they're doing some major stuff in 1D&D, which is now being called, what is it? The 2024 revision for D&D.
I will say also, and they said this, Jason said this in the other stream, they're also putting in all the rules, like for Bard. They're taking the rules from all the other books and combining it into one. They're taking
the Advanced Player's Guide stuff. Yeah.
So
because Advanced Player Guide will no longer exist, so Bard will have the core rulebook Bard feats, which were very short. I remember being like, guys, we don't have a lot of feats in Bard. It's like, well, we can't fit 2 more pages for Bard, so make the most of what you have. And so like it sounds like the Advanced Player's Guide feats are going to make it in there, and there's a bunch for the core classes, so that's going to be great.
And didn't Jason? I know Jason's told me this, and I'm pretty sure he said this publicly, and then you would know, is that when they finished writing the core rulebook, wasn't it over 800, 900 pages, and they realized, well, we only have 600 pages, 636 pages.
It was somewhere around there. Like, listen, okay, the spell chapter alone, copy fitting the spell chapter,
right?
It was a question of how much time can we devote to Mark being in the spell chapter, because Mark can remove pages from the spell chapter up to the point. And I made it to about G. So if you look through the spell chapter, you will find that the spells from A through G are copy fit a lot tighter than the spells after G or something like that. Because they're just what was like, no, we can't afford to put Mark for 3 more weeks getting these spells condensed to save pages. And we saved like literally dozens of pages just from condensing the A through G spells alone or something like that we were able to not cut from other places. So it was like, yes, absolutely, it was long. Oh, Steven said he's going to be right back. Let's see if there are any good additional questions in here. I see some people saying that they're really excited. That's a dream come true. I'm very excited about this too. Like, listen, designers always are working on new versions of things. And the moment a game comes out, even before it comes out, with pencils are down, and it's like, oh, but I have these 6 other things that I would want to do if I could do it. I remember there's one particular thing that Logan and I were talking about, like literally the day of it being done, and we were like, oh, this would be cool. So that's just how game designers are. And to some extent, you have to have like a pushback where you're like, wait, game designer, okay, we're taking this out of your hands. You can't keep changing it. But I love it when a game changes. I love when there's variant rules. I love it when things get refreshed, because I just think that's awesome. And if there is like one thing that comes out in the new, and I like the old one better, our group can keep that, and it'll work out for us. But I'm expecting to like the vast majority of these changes from everything I've seen. Jason Klimchuk said, "Is there going to be a replacement for venting casting?" I doubt it, but who knows? I mean, I think if there was, they would have said it at this point. Just like anyone who's saying, "Well, they make a big change to Class X." I think if there was, given that they did say they will for 4 of the classes, they would have said it. So I think that probably there won't be a big change to anything that's in the same genre as something that listed a big change, but was not listed to have a big change. That's right, a guess, though. I don't know, like, entirely. Kitchave says, "I feel bad for Mark." Why do you feel bad for me? I love changes and updates to things.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, if anything, also
don't feel bad for me. This is exciting. I want to work on the new dragons.
I'm very excited to work on this. I mean, not work on this, but to see what they're doing to improve the game. And I think it's healthy. It's a lot healthier to continuously update a game, because right now people are complaining on the other side for D&D that they haven't updated the game in 10 years. So
yeah, I don't know. It's like I don't know why they would be feel bad for me. Like, if you're thinking, well, it's not going to be the same game that you worked on, it sounds like it is. I think it is the same one that I worked on with errata and some name changes for the OGL. In fact, this having a nice refresh like this means that the game that I worked on will probably live longer, right? If they didn't do anything, they probably would have had to put out a Pathfinder 3 sooner or whatever. And so I think this is great.
And Eric said your name's still on the book, so...
I mean, I heard him say that I'm listed designer. I mean, it makes sense given the Paizo policy for how many words you write and being on the book, but that would be cool.
Yeah.
And I think that does make sense.
Chris Hansen.
Okay, so Chris Hansen for $5 said, "Do you think the APG classes will get some new subclasses?" I don't know. We'll have to find out. They definitely said that beyond the 4 that are actually having changes, that the other ones will have new cool new content. That was in the bullet point. So that might be part of the cool new content for sure. I guess we'll have to see. Like, the moment we find out any kind of juicy news, and we can try to share it. Demi Urge asked what my favorite changes. I have only seen the ones you guys have. But like, even though it's small, I'm really excited about wizards getting simple weapons. And rogues getting martial, but I don't care about that as much, but it is good because there's some very roguey weapons in martial that were just technically not on the list, right? So rogue, martial, and wizard simple, I'm just pretty excited about, because it was just so techie and weird that like wizards were the only ones who didn't have simple, and so they had to take the simple weapon proficiency feat. And why did sorcerers know the simple weapons better than wizards?
I can tell Mark's excited because he's not letting me get a word in edgewise.
Go for it, Steven.
No, it's fine. No, but I'm saying is, it's funny. Everyone is talking about the player core, but they also have the GM core and the monster core, and there's going to be a lot of pretty interesting things about the GM core, because they are adding expanded, Lost Omen stuff in there. But the monster core, they're adding a whole bunch of cool new monsters in there. So I'm excited to see those, because that's where things get creative. Like, they kept saying that they have to replace something for the Otiog. So what are they going to do to replace that? And probably not just one item. They'll probably put in a whole family of creatures, which will be pretty fun. And obviously, the heavy redesign of dragons, heavy revisions to dragons. I mean, come on, it's freaking
they
dragons.
Feel bad for me because of the copy fit of spells. Look, you know what? I worked on the spells, but I did a huge amount of the work on the spells.
Don't feel bad for him. He copy fits my stuff.
That was my bad for making them so long to begin with. I had already tried to cut down on some sentences that I know people like, but that were needless extra sentences, like the one about whether fireball will melt a metal based on its melting temperature. Look it up. It's in PF1 and all like the D&Ds. But I had already cut some of those, but I should have cut more. And you know what? I needed to cut them down, and I did. And I could have cut down more, but it would have taken more weeks of time, and we did not have those times.
Hand of Crystal, you can use those rules right now. You don't need to wait for the books to come out.
Yeah, just use it right now. Tell your GM that Erik Mona said it. didn't Erik say it was okay? I can't remember now anymore.
He said start.
I thought he gave his thumbs up to it. Not that like Erik is the number one authority of what you could do in your game. It's not like he said. It's not like he's going to send people after you.
Yeah. Well, that's something else that's exciting, and is that as more books come out and they have like Rage of Elements and other books coming out, you're going to be able to start using some of these new, I'm going to call them rules, but some of this new, well, I guess rules right away. You don't have to wait for the books to come out.
Right.
And these are going to be in, like he said, Rage of Elements is going to be completely 100% compatible with these remastered. What are they called? What are they calling it? They're calling it
remastered. I guess these core books.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Anyhow, I have to go. So, and we've gone on for over 2 hours, and Mark is probably still jet lagged and tired because he's now on the East Coast.
I'm not actually too bad.
Actually, you're not.
I slept for 12 hours last night. I went to sleep like so early, and you were like, "Where? What are you?" I was like, I was sleeping. I didn't sleep almost at all the night before that because we had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. for the flight. But so. Yeah, but I mean, I still have other things to do and other stuff to work on for, as you know, Stephen, because I told you before, but they don't know necessarily. I'm going to be on like DM Layer stream tomorrow talking about converting monsters.
Yep.
Yeah, and they wanted me to first wanted me to convert a monster on the stream, but I convinced him that might actually be like take too long or be boring for people to watch. So I'm going to try to convert one tonight that we can just put on and show the converted monster on the stream.
All right.
So well, I'll do that after
and
this.
Maybe I'll have another one because I've had a stream every day this week.
There you go.
There was a lot to talk about.
There was a lot to talk about.
Pinkertons, and then we had more Pinkertons. And this is really, it's interesting because this has latched on to non-gamers more than gamers, because a lot of people know who the Pinkertons, well, the United States have a lot of people know who the Pinkertons is. Actually, it was some people were from Canada saying they never heard of them, which was fascinating. But just that concept of, I had magic cards early, Pinkertons came to my house to take them back from me. That's a story, man. Like, you don't even need to know anything about it. You don't need to know any history. That just seems insane because it is. And then Linda Codega dropped, this was not the first time they did this. In fact, they've done this multiple times. And we were joking, and you missed this, Mark, that me and Derek were joking, and we used to always say, well, it's not like they're ever going to bust down your door and take your books away. And now we can't say that anymore. You know, it's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, we already joked about that in this stream when Erik said it, and it was like, and I think someone in chat was like, too soon, Erik, too soon.
Well, it's because we always joke about that. Like, they'll never do that. Well, now they are. and well, at least WotC might. WotC might not like it. In fact, you better be going to 1D&D, otherwise they're going to be breaking down your door and taking all your 5th edition books away, I tell you. Jesus. Anyhow, we have no idea who they are. Pinkertons, real quick history.
They're notorious private detective agency that has done some major union busting where they would like infiltrate and then huge amounts of intimidation where they like claimed they could do things that weren't really legal to intimidate people down and just like literally flat out just like shot and attacked people. They're so notorious that there's like, what is the name of the game? Red Dead Redemption 2, where like they're like the villains.
They're the main bad guy.
They're the villains.
That's what most people thought. That's what they thought. They thought it was a joke because they're like, oh yeah, they're like the Pinkertons in Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm like, Pinkertons have been around. In fact, the FBI and the CIA and pretty much all modern law enforcement has been based on the Pinkertons because they've been around since 1850, and they kind of invented this whole structure of the police, like how it even works. They invented mugshots. They had a picture of an eye, the unblinking eye, as their logo, and that is believed where the term private eye comes from, or PI, because that's from the Pinkerton logo. Like, there's the Pinkertons are actually part of the DNA culture of police enforcement worldwide, and they're still used to this day. for union busting, heavy union busting at places like Google and Amazon. They are, they're like the Yakuza. They're basically the Yakuza, the United States Yakuza. That's actually very apt.
I mean, they're like Russia's Wagner Group, right?
Yeah,
which is that paramilitary organization that is known to like secretly do Putin's bidding.
Yeah.
Except for they're an American corporation.
Yep. Yeah, it's really bad. Anyhow, they go around and they just through the name and by pure, acts of terror and intimidation, they get you to do what they want you to do. And all illegal. Anyhow, I gotta go. See Mark tomorrow on DM's Lair. And we might have another stream tomorrow, maybe Friday. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see what we can do.
Yes.
All right, take care, everyone. Take care, Steven. Oh, wait, Chris Hansen said, when I heard Pinkerton, my first thought was Deadlands. Yeah. There we go. That'll be the last word.
Well, there's a lot of things. Pinkerton's is used in a lot of video games, and there's a reason, because they're real. So there you go. But look them up. They have a pretty interesting history, because they actually started out as good guys, and they protected Lincoln and were heavily on the side of the Union. And they had the first woman detective, and they did spying on the Confederacy. Very interesting. And then they went evil, and oh boy, did they go evil. Anyhow, I gotta go. I will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.